And not only that, but the brain and the body are very connected. So there's no such thing as physical symptoms versus brain symptoms versus psycho cases. That just doesn't exist. The other thing is it's shifted medicine in general so that people are not their disease. People are people who are living with some condition or another. And the goal is to find out what your strengths are so that you can learn about your condition and live best with it. As I mentioned, one of the greatest determinants of a person's quality of life is their emotional state. To quote one of many Maya Angelou quotes that have come up is, no one really remembers what happened, what was said, what was prescribed 5 years ago, but you sure remember how you felt sitting with that person and talking with that person. And that's what sticks with you. And mood disorders have a lot of stigma in today's society, which is a really big shame. It's underfunded, very difficult to find care, but it's the thing that makes the biggest difference in our quality of lives. I had to put this in red because exercise is number one. And I like to think of exercise as, it's like money in the bank or gas in the tank. But think of it as every penny you put in the jar. Nobody else has got that penny from you. It's your penny, it's in your jar. If you did it yesterday or a week ago. So it is money in the bank. It's never wasted effort. So briefly, dystonia is a very unusual movement disorder because it can look all sorts of ways. And it can affect any part of the body. It can occur in young children, and it can come on very late in life. But the thing that makes dystonia dystonia is that it's a stereotype of repetitive pattern movement that is worse the more you activate your movement or your thoughts. That's what they mean by overflow activation. So a stuck position is not a dystonia. When you are thinking or walking, whatever body part is abnormally activated is going to do it more. And as many have mentioned, we don't really know what causes it. And there's so many different types, but what they may have in common is that there's an abnormal hypersensitivity of the brain, both to sensation and other things. And there's an abnormal integration of that sensory input to formulate an output, which means instead of turning off this muscle and turning on this muscle to go like that, the brain can't inhibit properly. So it excessively co-activates agonists and antagonists at the same time. So if you try to contract two fighting muscles at the same time, you get tightness, you get twisting, you get pain, and you get discontrol. And it can be jerky or cause tremor. It can be a slow twisting posture. But the characteristic of it is that for whatever reason, the brain is hypersensitive. It wants to be somewhere that it doesn't want to be. And the more you fight it, the more it's going to pull you in the wrong direction. So we also look at it in terms of like the musician, Dystonia. Yeah. I was about to blame the people who aren't using their earrings. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so and some of them are from birth, genetic, and get worse with time, and others, most of the so-called isolated or idiopathic dystonias are fairly static for many years. Some come on from repetitive activity, like musicians. This is what I'm going to blame for my failed flute career. I could not get my pinky down. My teacher would say, put the pinky down, put the pinky down. And I had a brace, it just wouldn't go down. And repetitive use of a certain brain circuit, once it that abnormal lack of inhibition seems to reinforce itself. And with the plasticity, you get almost like a track in the dirt gets deeper, deeper, deeper. And no matter if you're trying to go over here, but this thing keeps happening. All right, so this is a definition of major depressive disorder, which is one of the most serious types of depression. But I put it up here to just show you the symptoms that we should all be looking for, because not everyone looks the same. For the most serious depression, you have to have these 5 of the symptoms almost all the time, every day for 2 weeks. It has to be different from your usual. And so some people are really blue, sad, empty, no pleasure or interest, weight change, can't sleep, too much sleep. They could be really slow, and other people are agitated, irritable, grumpy, PMSy, but they often feel just inappropriately worthless, guilty, and they just can't think, they can't decide. Dysthymia is a word for mild chronic depression, and grief is a sadness that is triggered by an event like a tragic loss. And suicide is a huge, huge health problem, and it's growing. And it's growing in all populations, but it's something that I think is causing some people to pay more attention. As was pointed out previously, depression has both physical and mental symptoms. And when you get depressed, you get changes in your brain chemistry. And these lead to slowing of movements, low energy, and pain, as well as physical symptoms, just sadness, blueness, thinking of negative things. And there's considerable overlap with anxiety. Some people see it as kind of two sides of the same sword, but there's definitely overlap, and they often coexist. So anxiety has more forms and slightly more prominent. But you can see depression and anxiety, I would say, at some point in 90% of the movement disorders population, and usually about 40 to 45% at any given time in dystonia. So it's extremely common. There's been studies for this, and I want to point out that the depression almost always shows up before the motor signs of dystonia, and same with anxiety, and same with a lot of things. And it's also, you wonder, is this part of the condition? Because often, like an iceberg, you'll see the non-motor symptoms before you see the motor symptoms. But what it definitely shows is that not all the depression is due to the physical twisting and the pain of the movement itself. It's actually another part of the dystonia and not just secondary to it. I get a lot of questions of, is this going to turn into Parkinson's? And the truth is, it can, but that's rare. Most, this is kind of a rule of thumb, which isn't exactly accurate, but people who get dystonia as part of Parkinson's will develop Parkinsonism within 5 years. It's very commonly involving one hand or one foot, or sometimes the neck. But there are now tests that can detect dystonia Parkinson's sooner. We don't have a perfect test for all dystonia. Some are genetic, we can test for that. EMG can be helpful, but in the end, it's a clinical diagnosis. Okay, hurry now. As mentioned, it is a huge contribution to quality of life measures, much more than what you would think that the movement or even the pain is not as significant as a mood disorder in dystonia. So just a brief anatomy. I'm just going to wave my hands here. This is supposed to show you that the basal ganglia, which are involved in the automatic motor circuits, have these brain cells here, but they connect to other parts of the brain, the cortex, the subcortical prefrontal area, which are a lot of connections, the limbic system, which is the most primitive part of the brain. It has the amygdala, the fear center, which is a very powerful emotion, and connected to the brainstem and hypothalamus, which are involved in autonomic nervous system, heart rate, and bowel and bladder, and also hormones. And so a lot of these same circuits are involved in depression. One thing about Parkinson's, I just want to correct it, it's not just one small area of the brain. Parkinson's is actually way more diffuse than dystonia. Parkinson's affects not only the whole brain, the spinal cord, but can be found peripherally even before the brain. And what DBS does is it affects one small part of the brain to regulate one small part of the motor circuit, or sometimes the mood circuit. But it's a symptomatic treatment, and same for dystonia. The reason it takes longer in dystonia sometimes is that the target is the lobus pallidus, which is also a target in Parkinson's. And it takes 6 to 12 months longer to start working when compared to the subthalamic, which is a typical target of Parkinson's DBS. But the good news is people who get GPI DBS, they get the benefit, and it keeps benefiting them more and more over time. We think with some neuroplasticity mechanisms. So I know Pat talked about this. I just want to point out a recent paper that shows that depression isn't just a deficiency of serotonin or anything else. We've long known, and it's still true, that antidepressants help depression, and they help depression due to dystonia. And so it's natural to think, oh, the brain is low on serotonin, it's low on norepinephrine. And it's sort of true in that there are changes in the synapses that are either lower in number or, in degenerative conditions especially, or can be less efficient. And you can actually have more bad receptors that just don't work. To some extent, just flooding it with more serotonin or good chemicals, and usually that's done by blocking the reuptake or recycling of those neurochemicals, then you'll have more of it just floating around, and then you'll be less depressed. But I think the point of these authors was that at a certain point, if your depression is really serious, you might have to look at some other treatments. Pat went over this again, and there is a genetic basis a lot of the time, or some of the time, even a gene that you definitely have. You may live to 80 and never have a symptom that anyone sees, or you may never get it. And environmental factors are definitely involved, and the environmental factors can also affect the expression of your genes, both in your generation and the next. Okay, so yeah, nature or nurture, you can always guess all of the above and have 50% chance of getting the right answer on a multiple choice test. So this is just to show that different forms of focal dystonia have different types of mood disorders. So some are more associated with social anxiety, like dysphonia, and others are more associated with pain, like cervical. And all the groups, though, had more depression and anxiety. They did these studies normalizing, I'm not sure exactly, I didn't go back and see how they corrected for pain, but they did some controls and some mathematical things to try to compensate for pain and for the severity of the motor movement, and still emotion was a huge factor. So what are some of these things that determine how some people are just chirpy and some people are Debbie Downers? Well, we don't really know. As it was mentioned, there is something called temperament. You're born a happy kid or not, but it starts with infancy and attachment to your parents. How much attention you get from birth makes a huge difference on how you are later. And they've seen people who look sociopathic, and it was just because they never had anyone touch them when they were infant. So social problems, poverty, exposure to toxins and drugs. Trauma is a huge one, and I think in the therapy world, it's kind of like there's trauma-informed therapy, and then there's the other stuff, because it affects everything and has special treatment. I always ask about substance, whatever alcohol you think you're taking, multiply by 2, because things like that can really negatively affect your health. And tardive is for that population who unfortunately was given medications that cause dystonia and other disorders. So now what do we do? Well, you kind of take stock of where you're at, because it's all about the here and now. How is the dystonia affecting you, and what is most important to you? You are the expert on your own condition. You might be someone who is struggling, struggling most with, with your dystonia symptoms yourself, or maybe down the line. But I think it helps to journal and think about it and really list, because it just makes you see how it's not as big as you think it might be, but it gives you very concrete things to follow. The number one and two here is time and grace. You have to take time for yourself, and you have to forgive yourself if not everything is right. This is just to show that treating the dystonia helps the mood, improving the mood helps the dystonia, and the best thing you can do is exercise, plus what we call the enriched environment, which is number one, social connection, interconnection with other live humans, and things that we do. This increases brain synaptogenesis. So the brain, even in so-called seniors, which are, I have my AARP card, but it doesn't stop. This goes on and on throughout life, even as we age. So this is the magic pill that we wish we all had, but there is no magic pill. This is the magic pill, and throw some sneakers in there. Antidepressants work, and they're not too different from what you would think for other types of depression, but very, very important is lifestyle. You'll hear about the nutrition. Sleep you've heard about, because bad sleep, you will be depressed and anxious. And the first question that you sleep, oh no, I was up, well, okay, fix that. There's psychotherapy, social support, and other specialized treatments for more severe depression. A huge issue is the stigma of mental health. A lot of people think that mental health is different than real or so-called organic problems. And even 2 years ago, the word psychogenic was floating around. I think and all of you have seen that depression and anxiety are not just mild chemical imbalances. There are very real biological and environmental effects that cause changes in not just the brain but the body, and it affects the whole body. We know it causes stress, causes heart attacks and ulcers, but we also know severe depression can cause blood pressure problems and heart attacks and severe endocrine problems. So it's all connected. So you are not crazy. Unfortunately, it makes people too embarrassed to ask about mental health. But to me, it's no less medical than a wart. People blame themselves. You should pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yes, there's a component of action that you have to take, but it's not your fault. You were handed something, but now that you've been handed it, you got to own it. And I think Viktor Frankl is a perfect example. Well, he didn't deserve the Holocaust, but what is he going to do about it? And his point was that even if all you can do is master your dignity and choose how you feel, you've chosen that and you've done that for yourself. Another lovely quote. I think no one will care unless you do, but you're not alone. There's a lot of support, a lot of people who believe in you. Once you see the results, then you'll get addicted. So psychotherapy or talk therapy, again, this is just to show just being in a room with a caring person who listens to you accounts for at least half the benefit of therapy. We hate to say it, that's how they have a hard time proving that therapy A is better than therapy B, but it's definitely better than placebo. We know this. And so if you're the type of person who wants to work through negative past and trauma, or someone who just wants practical things, find the right type of therapist for you. They can help you get through the depression, possibly even without medication. Group therapy is helpful. It helps you to see that, hey, I'm not an alien. Everybody else got this too. And I'm just totally normal. And in fact, I'm more normal than that guy. So, it just helps to hear other people's experiences. Try to avoid self-blame, self-shame. And I love this. Don't shit on me. No should. It's never about should. You don't have rules that if you break, you're worthless. You have things that you choose, that you want to do. You want to do them because you can, because it's money in the bank, and that's what you want, and not that thing. So that's what I mean by ownership of your condition. These are some, again, the negative thoughts. And what a therapist can help do is make you realize that, you know, just because you couldn't do that thing doesn't mean you're totally a failure. Or just because this thing is sucky, that everything else is sucky. And here's where the exercise is, that the attitude of gratitude. It's not easy. Like if I could come up with 10 good things about myself, I'd be here till next week. But it's an exercise that you have to do to focus on what you want, because that's what's going to guide you. You're not going to be guided by what's bad. You're going to be guided by what you want, how to get there. So the power of action, you know, it's always like you reach a goal and, but you have to find joy in the process and the identification of what you want, patting yourself on the back, and just being aware. Oops. Okay, let's do these. Get out, connect with people. This is a good list, so don't make a bad list like 10-page paper, 8-page paper, 7-page paper. Make a list of I'm gonna get hot that. I'm gonna take it aside. I'm gonna eat what I like. And try to add some new things in there and just do it. And make sure you reward yourself for every accomplishment, because it's not about who you are, it's about what you do that makes you who you are. So this is just a fun for dogs. You know, not everyone's a people person, but if you're not a dog person, what's wrong with you? Serious, the company, and they are just so loving. And you might say, oh, they poop everywhere. I gotta take them outside. That's the whole point. You have someone you have to take care of and who loves you back. One of the things that's most gratifying in this world is giving of yourself, because you would never treat anyone else as badly as you treat yourself. When you find yourself giving kindness to another person, not only does it help that person, but it helps you. It helps me take my mind off things. And so anything that takes your mind off you and your suffering will give you energy to help someone. And I think it's just any live relationship, dog, human, if you can volunteer, whatever it is, it'll get your mind active and excited about something. So you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you are not a victim. It's all about quality of life. Nothing's perfect, but things help. And so it's just a matter of deciding what you want. You have the freedom of the choice to write as much as you want. And whoever hasn't read Viktor Frankl, if you haven't read Edith Eger, another Holocaust survivor who became a psychologist, she is like the queen of positivity and still doing ballet kicks at 92. And that's going to be Pat at 92, I'm pretty sure. But really shows you that no matter what life is thrown at you, that's not your fault, that you can thrive. And this is battle buddy exercise. That's my dog, Scooby. I was very unmotivated during COVID, but I found a virtual race where I could get a medal for my dog. And every day I said, I gotta get him more miles. And I gotta get it on my Garmin and log it in. So it got me up because I didn't want to let him down. I wanted him to win the medal. And he got it. And some parting positive quotes from the Queen. Right. I just think that these are just positive attitude quotes that when you read them, yeah, that's so true. And these are some just resources at the top, Dystonia ones you all know, but also some depression ones that might be helpful if you're interested in reading about it. Thank you.
again, that was so great. And then, again, her handout is a study in itself, so, take it and study it, this is good, information that you can take beyond the seminar. This is just as the affirmation you saw a bit ago. Some of you remember Howard Thiel, that, he was one of our mentor, Dystonia supporters, and let's see Dystonia for 30 years. He died a few years ago, and his affirmation every day he did, a number of times a day, he'd say, I'm awake, I feel great, and how's it? I'm awake, I'm awake, I'm alive, and I feel great. I'm awake, and stand up and say, I'm alive, I'm awake, and I feel great. It's something that really gets into your brain. So yeah, remember those affirmations. So now we're gonna shift back to the exercise and restorative exercise part. We have Patrick here, their business lecturer from New York City, New York State. He's involved with this business in aligned movements. He's been speaking doing groups with Dystonia for the last decade throughout the country. And he's going to be here today to give us further instructions on what we should do for our bodies. Let me get a tape. Don't take it. No, it's okay. Got it.
Actually,
Oh, let me get you. Click on.
hello. All right. It's good. It is working. I'm going to add another MacBook up here to help organize my own thoughts. So many computers. Is there a? There's. So we're pulling up all that other stuff. I'm going to take a little detour, a little side trek from exercise or movement or whatever to, and it's interesting because I think we'll be, I think the theme is recurrent a lot. From all the different speakers today, we're talking, and I think it's a great thing because we're going to be. Sometimes it takes hearing something from a different angle, a different perspective, a different word, or just a little repetition of something, for it to click or for it to spark a different idea in our heads. There we are. Yeah. And it is done. There it is. And is this the thing? Very cool. Yeah. So, how's everybody doing? Are we getting fatigued from sitting too long early today? So, if anybody wants to stand up, or we can actually all do that for a second. Maybe stand up for a second, and it's a bit like what was it? Mickey said that. After 45 minutes of sitting, it takes us 15 minutes to reset our bodies again. And that's a big issue in modern culture in general. It's that we are stuck in one rigid position all the time. And some of the worst inventions in mankind, in my opinion, are chairs and shoes, because they've limited the ranges of motions of our body. So yeah, feel yourself maybe even kind of bounce a little bit, shake around a little bit. A little bit of shaking is something that I might talk about a little bit today. I loved all these previous talks. There's so much good information from cognitive behavioral therapy to actual exercise to the principles of depression and what we can do with that. And so when I was and you can feel free to stand as long as you want. You can move around as long as you want. I don't mind. I don't understand. And you can sit down if you like to as well. So we're talking about coping and stress in relationship to dystonia, but we could actually extrapolate this to like any other adverse or challenges in your life. And we could talk about how, like, when we have that, how exercise, meditation, breath work are really effective means of managing stress and learning how to cope with chronic conditions. However, when I was thinking about this, I was really feeling like there needs to be a shift in the paradigm of how we interact with our own self. And that can be very helpful in order to lay down a more stable foundation for the effectiveness of all these mind-body skills. Mind-body, by the way, it's an interesting thing. Candace Pert, I think, was the name of the person who wrote The Molecules of Emotion. And her studies about like the actual neurobiology of emotion, and she coined this term mind-body specifically with no hyphen, no separation between those two words that we put together to help denote and change the paradigm that there is no separation, really. It is a continuum of our mind and our bodies are really all one and the same in very many ways. So to kind of change the paradigm, I was thinking about this book that I had used with some people that I work with who had Parkinson's, called The Art of Moving with Parkinson's by John Argue. And he is a big exercise, fanatic, and that's what we've been talking about this whole time. And he talks about how exercise can help with our health, our ability, our strength, our balance, our mood regulation, and even developing a sense of agency, how we move through the world. However, he does point out that exercise alone, out of context even, it doesn't necessarily address all the parts of a dystonia process. No, he talks about Parkinson's, he's someone with Parkinson's, but even so, we can find lots of overlapping qualities. And so I felt it was helpful to look at that. And he suggests that our coping strategy needs to address not only the body with exercise, but also include the mental capacities as well. And so his procedure is like creating a process for conscious flow. And he talks about these Parkinson's moments, but I think we might be able to relate to it here as well. It's the moments where our body just isn't cooperating. It's like, it's not doing what I want it to do. And he has this whole process, which is to collect your attention, to relax what is kind of creating stress and excitement, if you can, and come to an internal stop. I mean, it's literally giving yourself permission not to do the thing that you're about to do. Then follow that by mentally imagining where you want to go. What is it that you want to accomplish? And maybe you already have a strategy for that, or maybe you have to invent a new one right now in that moment. Then with complete and focused attention to take the action in the most easy way, the most graceful way you can, which might not be perfect, but it's about doing what is the most useful that you could possibly do. And then take a moment to recognize when that action is completed, and then come to another internal stop and think about the next action, and then repeat over and over and over again. And he talks about how as you put each moment of conscious movement together, you start to create what is like a flow. And he reminded me of a quote by yoga, I think it's Amrit Desai, who says that I live in continuous creative response to each present moment. There's not, and it's kind of about, it is the definition really of mindfulness. and also relaxation, that we're bringing to consciousness what might be subconscious, like automatic motions, or unconscious things that we're just not aware of. So his procedure, as he puts all those things together, when you take one conscious action into the next, he talks about as dancing with the dragon. And I love this term because it brings up a lot of images. Like if our challenge, if our disease, if our dystonia, if our condition, anything that we're working against might be thought of as this dragon that you have to fight. He switches it and says, no, we're not fighting. We're not waging a war against it, but rather we're learning how to dance. And I mean, and it's something that comes up through all, like, pretty much any realm of psychology, I would assume, and spirituality, and even physics, is that any action of opposition creates an equal force in reaction to it. So it's Newton's law. It's, any action creates an equal.
I am at the Dystonia conference
And
via Zoom
deal with this over here.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to go through and figure out
Yes,
who's
to
who's
go.
and you
Oh, you can actually go up. There's a place to just mute.
have to go
Okay,
through each
I'm
one,
good.
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
Anyway, so yeah, there's that equal and opposite. So that's why you find like religious teachers like Jesus saying, love thy enemies, which I just think is very fascinating, and putting this into this context, that what if it's not an enemy? And it's not even, let's put this into a different perspective. It's not even that we're just trying to be high-minded. It's just that there's something about not fighting that dissipates the opposing force, that dissipates that enemy. Lao Tzu from the Tao Te Ching says, when two great forces oppose each other, the victory always goes to the one that knows how to use. Which is a little bit of a mind twister. We're not used to thinking of dealing with issues in life like that so much. So, with any conflict, there's often really two opposing sides. Let's take something like very benign, like let's say we want to, we think, oh, I want to go get some ice cream. But yeah, there's the other side that says, I'm lactose intolerant and that's not on my diet, you should stay there. We have two different sides kind of fighting against each other. And what do we do with those sides? You could just like say, okay, you're bad and be quiet. Or well, let me back up a second. The first is to recognize that there are two characters present within us most of the time that might come up as conflicting sides. And how we deal with that is an issue. This reminds me of a Cherokee story. It's kind of a traditional thing. A lot of people have heard of this. It's like this, the quick version is that there's a grandfather talking to a young child, and he says, there are two wolves inside of me. One is for the forces of good, and the other is for the forces of evil. And the child asks, well, which one's going to win? And he says, he thinks about it for a second, and he says, the one that I feed, which is really suggestive and reinforces the idea that I think we're talking about of like what fires together wires together. And that was a phrase that Nikki used earlier. That where you put your attention is what strengthens what we practice. Like we're talking about with dystonia, like we have these certain movements that are always conditioned with a certain response. And so we're just trying to get into that idea that the one that you feed is what we're conditioning and strengthening. However, the thing about this is that, it's kind of like when you play a piano, if you're trying to learn how to, some might be musicians too. If you play a piano and you're practicing the scales, you're reinforcing and conditioning those movements to make these sounds. But we're not only reinforcing our physical movements, we're also reinforcing whatever else is going on with us habitually. So if we attack our practice or piano practice with like, lots of anxiety and lots of angst, if we feel real perfectionistic, if we are like, get really tense while doing it, I mean, I'm just making up examples there, we are also not only doing the scales, but we're also layering in all those emotional qualities to it. We don't want to be walking around reinforcing our stress and anxiety with everything that we do in our daily emotions. What I found interesting in even the Cherokee story about the wolves is that it wasn't, again, it's not the wolf that wins, is the one that I'm going to team up with and then battle the other. It's the one that I nurture, the one that I feed. And so that's a good way. I think that's one of the reasons why John Argue in his process of trying to create conscious movements talks about, okay, I want to nurture relaxation. I want to nurture being able to stop and be at peace for a second, collect myself, and then take some sort of creative action. However, what if the wolf, the other wolf, or the dragon, or whichever metaphor we're going to use, doesn't go away, which it probably won't. You can't just ignore it. It's there. It's still there. Even though I want to pay attention to this thing over here, that wolf may still be there. Which is kind of where things like positive psychology tends to get tends to get a little misunderstood. People think, oh, I have to think positively. That's what positive psychology is. And it's really not the case. It's really about learning that you can be resilient and you can live through any adverse challenge that you're presented with. And a good example is if you have a balloon, that's like all your, it's stress and anxiety, it's your negative thoughts, it's your feelings of limitations, or whatever it is, it can be wounds and trauma, anything. And you don't want to deal with it, so I'm going to push it underwater. And if you can imagine pushing something down to the water, you can kind of get the sensation that it takes a lot of effort to hold a big balloon underwater. And you're going to have to focus on it, hold it, and keep pushing it down for a long time. And eventually, you'll get tired, or you get distracted, or something's going to happen. It's going to pop up to the surface. So, how do you then, instead of push it down and ignore it, how do you learn to dance with an unwanted partner? How do you partner with the dragon? And that's kind of where I want to focus, shift the focus a little bit to. It's not just to push through and against this dragon, but how do we learn to dance with it? And a lot of it is understanding. This is, I guess it's a good place for to start, is to start to think about understanding. I think we've talked recently how everything is connected. Great physician, Gabor Mate, that deals a lot with trauma. And in one of his books, he is talking about how we are biopsychosocial beings, that we are our biology, our physical bodies. We are our psychology and our psychological makeup. We are also our social network. So everything around us is affecting our sense of self, really. And all these interact. And so it's useful to understand our past, our trauma. And trauma, this word has come up a few times, and for some people it has a particular connotation. And according to people like Gabor Mate or Bessel van der Kolk, who's written some great books on this subject, it's not a big event like a catastrophic, it can be, but it's like a catastrophic event like a tsunami wipes out a village or a war. It could also just be a parent that wasn't emotionally able to react to you in a attuned way when you're a child. And those same things can have chronic effects throughout your life. So it's not really the event It's more about the wound that happens inside and the process that then continues throughout your life. And there's been a lot of research and a lot of evidence that shows that those sorts of traumas can lead to elevated stress levels, lead to suppressed immune systems, and lead to chronic conditions that are on. So by acknowledging the past, we can start to get a little bit of understanding. But it's not to get stuck there. It's really just to learn where we are, what we've been dragging around, and then learn how to develop, like this dragon, maybe a different relationship to it. So this is a quote by the psychologist Carl Jung. The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. And that can even be like a physical reaction too in our bodies. So I wanted to take a look at then how, in that case, do we actually create, a different relationship with this thing. One is, just changing the definition. I love that one thing that Gabor talks about is that disease is not like a thing. It's not like, here's my cell phone and I have my cell phone, put my cell phone over here or whatever, or my cell phone or like some anvil or something is put on me. But rather, what if we were able to think of it more of a process? It is that biopsychosocial element of like a process of everything that has and is happening to us, and it is something we can have a relationship with. This sometimes brings up that idea that people actually get really, people feel like they tiptoe around a lot because it can be very tender, where people then also would say, are we blaming the victim? I think we were just hearing about that. And another quote from Gabor is that it's like, no, we are not saying you are at all responsible for the disease, but we might be able to find responsibility to it. How do we enact with it? So, I'm kind of going around in many ways of saying, like, what is a relationship with it? So how do we develop a better relationship with it? And here I wanted to just kind of talk about, there are lots of modalities to learn how to deal with these thoughts, emotions, sensations that come up that might be helpful, and so I wanted to hopefully talk about a few of them and also see if we can experience a couple of exercises. Breath work is good. We'll talk about that in a second too. Just as a way to like open up our minds a bit to think about, oh, okay, there are things I might be able to do, things I might be able to explore and study. One of these is ACT, which is it's a process, a psychological process developed among others by Stephen Hayes, which stands for Acceptance Commitment Therapy. And really the principle underneath it is to help us understand that the content and the content of our thoughts and emotions is not quite as important as how we deal with them, how we relate to them. And so one of the aspects in that modality is what they call diffusion, which is to be as opposed to fused with. Like if we are so connected to how we feel and what we think, like, and I'm use like crazy examples, like I think like I'm a terrible person, it's like, and that's all I can see. That's going to be the domain perspective of the entire world. We are trying to find a little bit more space, a little bit more like diffusion from those, so that we can make a choice. Like, what am I willing to feel here? And am I able to develop some psychological flexibility to kind of move around those thoughts? So here's a cool example, or a cool exercise we can play, and just to kind of get a sense of what we're talking about with that is that, so if you take your hands, and you put your hands like you're reading a book, and you put your hands from here, and you slide your hands right up in front of your face. And where you can maybe just see slightly, through the fingers. And think about this as like these are certain emotions, these are certain thoughts, these are certain patterns that feel like they're holding us down, like really close to your face. And if you feel that, and if you see what's going on, imagine trying to walk around, engage with life like this. It's actually kind of difficult. You would bump into things. You can't really see people. Now, slowly, just start to lengthen the distance of your hands from your face. It's a little farther and farther away. And notice at a certain point, you begin to see the whole room around you, all the people in the room. And you can see your own body. And the hands are still there. Those thoughts, those emotions, all those things that might be quote unquote negative are still present. But they're not the most or the only thing that you can see. And that's kind of just a nice example of this idea of diffusion. So another thing. So it's a way to get to the idea of like what is actually working for me. It's like if walking around like this isn't working for me, can I choose something? Can I work to find a different perspective? All for the purpose of living a happier, more fulfilling life in the end. So here's another a couple little exercises that are found in this type of model. And one is, so if we can think of, and we can all do this, we're going to just do little tastes of a couple of things, so we'll do this pretty quickly. If you can think of anything that's like right now, it might be in your body, it could be like, so my back hurts, I'm sick, or it could be, I'm having these thoughts, I'm hungry. Make it something easy so it's not too like overwhelming right now. And if you can notice the feeling and notice the thoughts behind it. One example might be, and bigger thoughts might be, like I said, oh, I have pain in my neck. Or a bigger thought might be, oh, life is too hard. I'm never going to get out of debt. Any thought that comes up like that, you want to actually pay attention to it. You want to actually start to think about it a little bit and let it repeat in your mind, just a little bit. And then try this. If you're thinking, oh, I have this pain in my neck. Or if it's more of a thought like this word better than feeling, you can change the word for feeling. I'm thinking the thought that whatever. And if you can just repeat that in your mind, I'm thinking the thought that. I'm thinking the thought that my body doesn't work. I'm thinking the thought that I won't be able to do great.
Big things come down back there.
Try to find that thought a few times. And notice what happens if you just put the label in front of it. I'm thinking the thought that. Then, add in the phrase, I notice I'm thinking the thought that, whatever it is that you're thinking. I notice I'm thinking the thought of my life is over. Again, making another thought. And notice the intention there is like with the hand, you're trying to create a little bit of distance between this is me to, oh, this is a thought. So that's one interesting example that you find a lot, that you can find in the ACT process. Another one, and I just love this one to go into for another second, is how willing are you to feel what's happening? And this is the breath, this goes into breath work that we talked about. If you can label, if you can take in an intention with your breath work, it can create some deeper impact with the breath. So this one is this, is if you can, you might even close your eyes for a moment, just to take this in. And notice what you're feeling in your body. And just as an experiment, say as you breathe in, I accept this present moment. As you breathe out, I let go of all my resistance. And just try to see if you can repeat that I accept the present moment. Inhale, I let go of all resistance. I exhale. After a few moments, notice how you feel. Now, there are things that we might not be willing to feel, and that's okay. This is where you might have to just remind yourself to have compassion. Have compassion for yourself. Ways, and there's lots of practices that you can actually delve into to assist that. One is, I just wanted to label a few just to notice what they, just to kind of put them out there so that if they're intriguing to you, you might want to like look into them at some point. And we're going to have some references that you can send out later, so you don't have to write everything down unless you want to. EFT is an interesting one. It's a emotional freedom technique, often known as tapping. And there's lots of specific points that they practice in tapping that are kind of related to acupuncture or meridian type areas in the body that are supposed to help regulate your amygdala and your nervous system. A real simple version of it, we might just kind of play with and try to feel right now if you want. If you have that same thought, or if you have any other thought that bothers them, or a sensation in the body, just take a couple fingers right under your collarbones, cross your arms, and just alternate lightly, easily tapping slowly between right, left, right, left, right, left. And without trying to change the feeling or the thought in your body or in your mind, just repeat it to yourself, which might be, my foot hurts. And just keep noticing my foot hurts. Or I feel constriction in my throat and neck. Not trying to change it, not trying to make it different, just noticing it while doing this light tapping. It might take a little bit. If you just notice, just with giving yourself permission not to change it, but just to keep acknowledging, noticing with that light tapping, it has the potential of creating some nice shifts. You can go way deeper into those practices too. That's really, really nice. The work of Byron Katie is a really cool process to play with, which is about inquiry. If you have thoughts that you are struggling with, to inquire upon the truth about them, to give yourself more freedom from the thought. So that's a nice modality to look into, as well as metaphor work. Internal family systems is a nice one developed by people like Richard Schwartz, which is really looking at, like the dragon, like the wolves, that they're all parts of ourselves, and how do we relate and speak to them? Also, polyvagal theory is a great, interesting thing. There's a big thing, and it's becoming more and more popular now, this idea that you can tone or, you can address your nervous system through particular actions that affect your body, such as things like, oops, where's the button here? Like breath work, we talked about that. Even humming, if you hum to yourself, there's something about that vibration that happens that goes all the way up into your brain. I don't know exactly why it works, but it does. Can help calm our nervous system. Cold immersion is a really interesting one that I'm an advocate of. Again, this is take it or leave it, grain of salt, whatever seems interesting or might be fun to play with, you might try to just look into it. Shaking, like literal shaking, is another one that's getting more and more traction too. There's a specific technique called TRE, which is trauma release exercises. Great ways, and they're all intended to help us regulate our nervous system and tone down that, like, this might not be the exact language, this is hyperactive vagus nerve. And one more that I wanted to just look at is back to the metaphor. One more process you might move through, even right now, in a short snippet, is using, and it's kind of literally, it's like using the imaginative right side of your brain to create a different relationship to your physical body and your parts, maybe your emotions. So the process of that would be to take, once again, and you might do this right at the moment, is just notice, what is it I'm feeling? You know, is it pain? If there's a pain, if there's some tension, if there's stress, what am I feeling? Then you might ask, if I were to externalize that, if I were to be able to place that outside of me, what would it look like? And this is where your imagination can run wild. Is it as the devil? Is it just a younger version of myself? Is it, you know, some abstract shape? Does it have fur? You know, you can go, you can just keep asking yourself questions like that. And then actually begin a conversation. You know, what? And this is where the revolutionary part of that, is it a dragon, is it a wolf, is it something we're fighting versus, is it a part of us that we want to be able to be in dialogue with? What if it were actually an innocent being? What if it were actually trying to help us? What if, you know, if my neck is really hurting, if my foot is really hurting, whatever it is, what if it's actually there for a purpose? Could I just open up the possibility that I could talk to it and ask it things like, why are you here? What is your purpose? How are you here to help? And what messages might you have to give? And finally, also, what do you need? What do you need to feel more at peace and calm? Even if that doesn't make the pain go away, it's a really nice technique to maybe get some more deeper insight to your own self, to your own relationship to your pain. So finally, and this is the title of Richard Schwartz's book with Internal Family Systems. He has a new book recently now called No Bad Parts. Like there are, like every part of us is there for a reason, even the troublesome ones. So I just wanted to do one last little meditation, which is, go back there, yeah, is if you can take your hands and just hold them out. And this is, it's important to have the hands out because it actually, you know, in a sense, think of it as like stimulating the motor portions of your brain to on the right and left sides. And if you're to think of, let's say on the left side, left hand is some version of your body. As if you can hold a miniature version of yourself in your body, acting as ever it would, wherever it is doing, with whatever condition it's presented with right now. And on the right hand is the part of us that wishes it were different. The part of us that wants our body to do something else. And what would that part look like? You know, is it, you know, some people call this like the authoritarian side, is it a dictator, is it, you know, or is it some sort of regimented military commander? But it could be anything else that comes to your mind. And if you can imagine holding both of those in your hands, just notice how they're fighting each other. Notice how they might be tired of fighting, working so hard. And the exercise, as you notice their state, is to begin offering them affirmations, some sort of loving message. This comes from a Buddhist meditation, which is called metta, which is to offer it some sort of love to say, I see you. May you be well. May you be at peace. May you be at ease. May you be rested. May you be calm. And you can keep just imagining or offering different phrases that bolster them. And notice if in your mind's eye they begin to shift and change. Do they begin to rest? You could do that for a while. And at some point you might ask yourself, who is it that is observing? Who is it that is doing the affirmations and the questions? And in a way, it's some part of us that is higher than the commanding self, and some part of us that is the body itself. And if you want to close that, you can just take your hands together and put them onto your heart. Take a breath. We did a lot today that was just about our mental aspects of how we deal with the body, how we approach it. But in actual movement, in actual exercise, I would suggest, can we take some component of that with us? That no exercise is out of trying to dominate ourselves or trying to force our body into any position or, you know, struggle against it. But can we move and do all our movements and exercise with some sense of peace, compassion? And there are lots of techniques you can do this with it. And you can go, you know, I'm going to do maybe another webinar on this on the website, I think, at some point. But it's like, how do you then bolster all the activities and exercises to make it more accessible for your body? Could you break it down so you're only doing one part of an exercise that seems more accessible to you? Or to really, you know, a good example of that one is like, say you're trying to do downward dog yoga, but that's feeling too much. You know, part of downward dog is just lifting your arms over the head. And maybe that's all you need to work on. Maybe it's just the hinge of the hip and straighten your hamstrings. That's still part of it. And accepting that by doing the smaller parts, you are like someone said earlier, no exercise is wasted. It's all important. And then if it is causing stress and aggravation, you have permission to set it aside and do it later, or not at all. So in conclusion, it's just how do you relate to your body, and can we learn to dance with that dragon rather than fight it? Here's my website. If anybody has any questions or wants to talk more, feel free to reach out to me. I also hopefully I have a whole bunch of like little references and websites. If you want to look into any of those other modalities I mentioned, we can send you links for that. So thank you very much.
We couldn't see your website. Can you say it out loud?
It is, I'll come over here. It is inalignedmovement.com. So it's,
Thank you.
yeah.
And we can send that out to
Awesome.
everybody on the site. Yeah, we can turn that to the, yeah. You know, Patrick is also, he's a certified life coach. So he's worked with people with dystonia for a long time. He can work with you one-on-one.
Oh, great.
Site with Zoom, and he has a movement a website that he has that he can deal with in restorative exercise. So lots of good options there. So we can send that out to anybody that would like to connect with you.
Great. Thank you.
And,
Oh,
so next we're going to get to the next part just before your lunch. Is Joan Hogan's has been working with doing talks to people with dystonia and with Parkinson's actually for over like 20 years now with different groups around the country. But again, the important part of our formula, you know, exercise, stress release, sleep, and nutrition. And so now we're going to talk about what can be done for the adaptogens to help.
One of the things I've learned in working a lot with migraines and movement disorders, is that, and what I like to tell our patients is that I think when dealing with these disorders, you kind of have to see your self-care as a toolkit. And we've gotten a lot of pieces to the toolkit today. And what I'm going to do now is talk about a little piece of the nutrition part of your toolkit. Okay. So, again, I'm working with the spirit. Is that right? Oh, one of the signs and says here, are you sure that's the right one I sent you? Oh, it's okay. I'll just make sure. That doesn't look like you sent me. Did you do that? Go down, yeah. Is it on the flash drive? No. It's on the flash drive. I'll just make it work. Okay. So we're going to talk about adaptogens, and how many of you have heard of adaptogens? Kind of have a feel for what it is? A feel you do? Okay. So I'm going to start by just defining what an adaptogen is. An adaptogen is a plant, or it could be an herb, a bean. It is a plant, I should say. It could be an herb, a bean, or a fungus. That's definition number one of an adaptogen. And the other criteria that we begin to recognize, they're usually something that's been studied for quite a number of years. Technically, 1,000 years is how they've been studying. Are you doing something? Oh, because, okay. Oh, okay. And the other criteria is that adaptogens help in our adaptation to stress. And we have this slide. Is it? Oh, I can hold it. Let's see. Okay. Okay. No. It's okay. It's just an added thing, so I'm just going to share. Okay, so anyway, back to what are adaptogens. So they're a plant, and they can be an herb, they can be a bean, or they can be a fungi. Like I said, they've been studied for over 1,000 years. They, as a part of adaptogens, which I'm going to talk about, have to do with stress, a large part of it. And it also has to do with this element. Oh, and a lot of it has to do with this element of re-establishing balance in the body. And that's also something I'm going to explain in a little more detail. The other thing is it's pretty much safe in any dose. Now, I am going to make some disclaimers to that as we go along, but pretty much these adaptogens, you can't overdose on them. One of the things I like to bring up about adaptogens as well, which going back to how they've been studied, which I found very fascinating, especially with what's going on in the world. I kind of like think of it as well, it's not all bad. A lot of our research on adaptogens come from Russia. And the Russians looked at adaptogens around the time of World War II, and they wanted to keep their troops kind of energized, and they didn't want them to be stressed, and they wanted them to be wake up every day and go out and fight and be refreshed. And they found that by giving the troops these stimulants, that they actually just had these troops that were up and down and stressed and couldn't function well. And so it was from these Russian studies that we gathered so much information on what adaptogens can do. Studies that actually started in the 40s and were pretty intense on up till the 80s. And I think I read there was something like 3,000 studies were done on adaptogens. But these are plants, herbs, fungi that have been studied in quite a bit of detail. And how they work is they stimulate cellular defense systems by different signaling pathways. And you know, our medications and even some herbs and supplements we use, they might just target one specific area, or like we talked about antidepressants, they stimulate serotonin pathways. What we find with adaptogens is that they can stimulate several different receptors. And of course, we all have different genetics that will cause us to have what we call gene variants. And so some of us have variants in these gene receptors and some of us don't. But because of the adaptogenic properties of plants, they can kind of act on all of these. There's also kind of an energetic ATP synthesis that happens with adaptogens too, where it can actually activate that part of the cell where we generate energy or ATP, that's powerhouse energy of our cells. And the one that was on my other slides is what's called energy. It's neurogenic transmitters in the brain, and it actually can stimulate those as well. So it's quite fascinating how these adaptogens can affect so many different receptor sites in the body. Just a little comparison here to stimulants and how adaptogens are different. Anyway, the difference between stimulants and adaptogens are stimulants, just a few things, and I know this slide is super hard to read. But for example, a stimulant, will that give you energy? Yes. Will an adaptogen give, or will an adaptogen, will a stimulant deplete your energy? Yes, it will. Will an adaptogen deplete your energy? No, it won't. So example one we always know is caffeine. You know, it'll kind of boost you up, but ultimately, if you take high doses, it will deplete your energy. So that's kind of a good example of the difference between an adaptogen and some of these other things we might take for, let's say, stimulation. Are there side effects? Very rarely. Does it have an addiction potential like some of our stimulants or anti-anxiety medications? Potentially, yes, with medications and maybe even some herbs like CBD. But with adaptogens, no, it's not going to cause any kind of addiction. So just some ideas here on how the adaptogens can be different. And because of these cellular processes that are involved with adaptogens, what we find is they are able to target a number of different systems in the human body. So let's say you want to try an adaptogen for stress, okay? It's not just focusing on stress, it's focusing on the stimulation of these different receptors, but in turn, it can target a number of different stimulants, that's what I wanted. And our immune system, our digestive system, circulatory, nervous system, and then indirectly maybe impacting our skeletal system, reproductive, muscular system, which many of us are looking for dystonia, and other parts of our whole body. And that's one of the adaptogens. We see it as a way to take something in that affects our whole being, where it needs to help. And because here's kind of an example of how the adaptogens work for stress. So here's our normal response to stress, and here's the effect that we can get with an adaptogen. Okay, and then this line here is kind of this idea of kind of reaching kind of a homeostasis or a balance in ourselves. So these are some of the ways that the adaptogens work. And before I go into some examples of what kind of adaptogens you might consider, I like to talk about the plant itself because I think it's quite fascinating. Like, well, what is it with this plant or this herb or this fungi that's so great? And, you know, how is this possible? And what's really interesting about these particular plants is they live a very hard life. Okay, so some of these plants have lived in incredibly cold conditions or incredibly hot conditions, or they lived in drought, and they've been without water. So they have to, in order to survive, they had to develop cellular mechanisms inside the plant itself to stay alive. And then the beauty of the plant is that is then transferred over as we eat them or take them in. They are incorporated into our cellular signaling. And that's where all this research is found over the years. And I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool. The other thing, though, if you eat these plants, is that you'll find that a lot of them are very bitter. And that's because the other mechanism these plants have often used is this ability to developing kind of a bitterness to the plant itself. And again, it's their kind of the defense and their way to survive. So bitter is better. Okay. Okay. So moving on, I want to talk about, I think I picked 4 herbs and plants that you might want to think about. And the first one is ashwagandha, and ashwagandha is probably the most popular adaptogen. You guys, and ashwagandha, again, these plants, what's this with it? Stress reduction, anxiety, regenerative sleep, and inflammation. How can it do all of that? You know? But again, go back to all the mechanisms that this adaptogen is touching on. Look at the stress response, and many of you know if you've been super stressed or been super stimulated by some sort of stimulant, you crash. But the whole idea of adaptogen is to allow your body to adapt to its own potential normal state, that you shouldn't have those big highs and lows. So your adaptogens work can be taken in a tea, it can be taken in a tincture, powder, or a supplement. And I also want to talk about these adaptogens is likely to have grams, okay? Or another way I heard about it is that they can be sad. And so sometimes you see these with reishi, tulsi, rhodiola, or you can take it in a tea with a nut milk, or ghee, honey, cinnamon, or cardamom, but they all kind of help the adaptogen kind of work a little bit better. And the dose is recommended 3 milligrams twice a day. I, of course, say always start low and go higher. So try it out and see how 300 works for you. Maybe that's all you need. This one is another very popular one for basil, also known as tulsi. Historically, this was something that was still named the emperors, I think it was China, could use. It was very good for stress and anxiety, and also digestion. And it was interesting. I have a patient who was seeing. She was in her 80s, very nervous, very anxious woman, and she was on 2 anti-anxiety medications and blood pressure medicine, all because of stress. But she was coming to see me because she also had horrible diarrhea. And she goes, I want you to help me with my diarrhea. And we had already worked with her diet quite a bit. She had a lot of things going down. She goes, it's down to stress. I know stress. So with her, I am now using an adaptogen with her to kind of work with this systemic approach instead of just, her medications were working on stress resistance, maybe together receptors or serotonin receptors. And somebody was dealing with their blood pressure. So everything was dealing with systems that I thought, let's try an adaptogen and work from a whole body experience. So just an example of how that works. These also can be used in a tea or liquid tincture supplement. It also likes aspirins again. These two complement each other very well. Black pepper, ginger, hot coconut. And again, these are some doses. You should not both, like one or the other. Rhodiola, also very common. Again, same kind of ideas here. I think a lot of them can also work on memory because if you're super stressed, that causes a whole other cascade of problems that might affect the brain in general in memory. Again, in a lot of different forms. Rhodiola, especially if you're concerned about memory, it works very well with lion's mane, cacao, honey, and again, some different ways that you take it. This one I wanted to talk about. I just tend to think this might be something very interesting for those of you struggling with dystonia, with kind of periods. How many of you have heard of periods before? Okay. Periods is actually also known as adaptive being. It can work also with stress, the brain, with even. But what's fascinating about it, it actually does contain some levodopa. And I think one of the things that we don't know with dystonia is what parts of the brain is it affecting. And there's been some thought about, does it have to do somehow with the dopamine pathways? Not that that means you're going to get Parkinson's, like Dr. Rowe brought up, but is there a role for a very small amount of dopamine? And I should say this is a replacement for dopamine if you have Parkinson's disease, but this very small amount that you can get from glucocorticoids, would that be something that might further help with dystonia? And I don't know, and I can't find anything about it. I do know some people that Parkinson's will just take a little bit of it, or with restless leg syndrome, which we know is a dopamine potentially deficiency situation that sometimes can help with restless legs as well. But it also can help with stress. It's also best friends with all of these components here. Threonine is an amino acid. It's also involved in that metabolic pathway for synthesis of dopamine. So it is just something interesting to explore. And again, it's I always say start low, start with 200 milligrams and maybe more that. But very, very little side effects with any of these. Reishi is another one. I want to throw in one mushroom. Stress, immunity, also longevity. A lot of times you find it in a root form, in the tea or the extract. Number of different ways you can take it as a supplement in the dose. This will reduce say no more than 4,000 grams a day. Yeah. I made a number of changes to these slides, so I'm trying to figure out what's missing. You can add it to soup or coffee. So, and again, it also works, it has its friends here that you can take with it. As far as high vitamin C, I recommend it from food like the orange juice or broccoli or strawberries, not necessarily a vitamin C supplement. So I just want to touch a little bit on how we buy adaptogens. I always say make sure the Latin name is on the product. For example, is it leaf, is it what, and also the name. So ashwagandha leaf, which is a common form, or reishi root. For example, confirm that there is a dose on the label. Some places that tend to give good products are co-ops, Whole Foods, natural markets. Good brands are these here. I also have some pure encapsulations in my office. The Douglas Lab, only if you want more. I always like them here. Any of these, I recommend you always buy one here. If you're at a farmer's market and you see some reishi root or something, just be careful, make sure it's fresh. If you need any information about where it was grown, I think that's important. And I also say when you buy these products, avoid products that have more than 3 or 4 adaptogens in them. So we might see those with, oh, well, it's not the whole one that you talked about, plus more, that's so cool. And chances are, if you're getting that many adaptogens in one product, you're not getting a product. Okay, it's not getting enough of anything. So kind of pick one primary one and say, I'm going to try ashwagandha. Try it, and then maybe have a few best friends to go with it and just keep it with them. Just a couple other comments. I do say it is a blood thinner a little bit, so if you're on a blood thinner, I recommend being careful with that. Some of these adaptogens are very effective in decreasing stress and anxiety, maybe even a little bit of depression. So I always say, let your provider know, hey, I'm going to try this, is it okay? aware, maybe we need a change in your medication. Maybe you will need to start on medication or take a blood pressure medicine. Just, you know, I think it helps to keep everybody informed. I also say take it before you can sustain, because you honestly, it's not like you take these things for a week and it's like, well, that didn't really good. You sometimes have to take them for a month or 2 months. Again, they're adaptogen, they're going to take time, just like exercise and all these other things we talked about. Is it's going to take time for you to feel the full effects. So if you don't think you can drink that tea every day, you know, maybe go for the supplement, but then maybe take the tea on the side. You know, maybe take the ashwagandha supplement and maybe start your morning with a cup of ashwagandha tea or something like that. And it's best if you can take them in between meals as well, and things will work a little bit better. I just want to wrap up this, a couple things may be coming to your mind that, gosh, that an adaptogen or not. And one is, if you come to our office, we use serenity quite a bit, which is a decapeptide from milk. So technically, it's not a plant. It does have some of the same properties as adaptogen, so because serenity helps in lowering stress, and it helps in lowering cortisol levels, which can have a total effect on the body. Something else we use a lot in our office is Revlimid, which is magnesium, methylated B vitamins, and CoQ10. And that also is just nutrients. It can be a blend to all of these products, but it is non-adaptogen. CBD, that is a plant, and that is very controversial. Again, it has not been studied well for 1,000 years. And for some people, it may not have a positive adaptogen effect. I think it depends a lot on your genetics, which way that can go. So I don't put that in a category of adaptogens as well. So I'm going to stop there, and we're due for lunch. If you have questions, I think I'll be here for the question and answer. Will I be here? Okay. I have to go home and get a car ready to leave. So I'm not sure what my job description is. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Oh, but feel free to ask me questions during lunch. And I want to talk a little bit about what we have out there. So it's an all vegetarian meal. We have an amazing lasagna, vegetarian lasagna that does have cheese. We have a quinoa bean salad that is dairy free. We have the ratatouille, which is gluten-free, dairy free. We have cheese you can put on either one of those. We have a gluten-free bread and regular bread. But if you're not gluten-free, just be careful. You don't just take the gluten-free, so make sure we have enough for that gluten-free. Okay, you guys, enjoy. Yes. Yeah, but it's gonna keep running, so I can stop
So maybe
the
for
recording.
those of you on Zoom, for those on Zoom, do you want to put a pause or no?
Yeah, I can't put the whole thing on.
No, that's okay.
pause,
But just to
I-
let you know, for you on Zoom, we'll be back in about 30 minutes. So
So Dystonia started its build-up phase when I was entering middle school. So grade school was not so bad. I had my tight-knit group of friends. They just were all kind of like, oh, Jason, he's a little different now. We don't know what's going on, but he's still cool. So then middle school in 1986 in suburban Portland, Oregon was not fun. It was not fun to be a person that had a difference that made me stand out. I was a bully magnet. So, and I was kind of thinking about it. Like, there were times where I would leave 6th grade English class and have a confrontation with the bully. And then I'd be walking through the hallway and I have a confrontation with another bully. And then walking into art class, a third confrontation with a third bully. Sometimes it was just words. Other times it was actual violence, fighting. I got my fair share of trauma and had my adaptations well developed by the time I got to high school. I think if you're someone that's a little bit different and you're dealing with that kind of constant bullying and just like negative stuff, you kind of just want to disappear. And so I think probably 8th grade to my freshman year, I learned to disappear. But the first thing about that is that in order to deal with the social anxiety, you have to have people, okay? You have to have support. And it can't just be mommy and daddy, right? You have to have friends, right? So I had to develop strategies to not get bullied, to not get into fights, to not stick out like a sore thumb. And then you need other people. You need those connections, right? You have to have those connections. So in high school, I developed a shell, and in high school, I started to kind of come out of my shell. So I don't know how I ended up in this group of friends I ended up with, but I did. I had friends. They were good friends. They were supportive. They were not judgmental. It was not a toxic group of people. I coped in middle school by hanging out with some toxic people who were also always getting bullied and suffering the way I was suffering. But they weren't the kind of, I didn't want to be a toxic person. So, okay, everyone stand up. Okay, sometimes I think of dystonia as it's like a kind of like a rave going on in my head. So, so we have okay. So now we're going to add a little bit of percussion. Okay, so everybody stand up, lean forward. Now nod your head as fast as you can, but without moving your neck. Okay. So okay. So it started out with the vowels. No, everybody did keep going. Keep going. So it started out with the vowels. Then it moved on to a movement in my head. So that was the next thing. And then that movement got a little bigger. So it went from being a treble, like to a little bit more of a bass. So it's a little bit more like boom, 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 boom. Okay, so that was the start, and that was the build up. Okay, all right, you can sit down now. Okay, so somehow in high school I did, and keep in mind I still haven't received a diagnosis at this point. I still didn't know what this affliction was. I think I still maybe kind of thought that it would just kind of go away, that like just like something magic there was some magic that would just make it disappear. But I think one of the biggest and most important parts of my development as far as being able to like cope with dystonia was learning that it was not gonna, it wasn't just gonna go away on its own, that it was kind of like a part of me. And there was no magic that was just gonna happen and it was gonna go away. I think once I accepted that, I started being able to kind of live with myself a little more. Okay, everyone stand up. Okay, now we have our little like house music going on, right? With we got a little like, and then we have the, and then we have some, okay. So we have all that going on, right? Then it gets funner because you start to get the more explosive things that start to happen. So again, high school age, you start with your fast nod, and then you get your bigger nod, your head bob, and then you get your boom, right? So you have your more explosive, big, there's no way I can really have you guys demonstrate this, but the movements become very explosive, very snappy, and big. So it's like, you get much more of a twist, much more torque. Everybody try that, at least try that. A forward, torque, and twist of your neck. Now imagine having that happen like 75 times an hour. That's where the pain starts to come in, right? You start to feel the pain. You start to get, the forward tilt of your neck becomes a little more permanent because your body is suddenly, your brain is suddenly always trying to do the twist. It's always trying to do the torque. Now, here's something that some people that don't have dystonia might not realize, and that is that we can feel the action going on in our brain. Like you can't like feel your brain, right? You can't like if you opened up your head and like start touching your brain, you couldn't feel that. But we with dystonia have a sense of the electrical buildup. For some of you, you might have a constant. I know some people, they're constantly saying no. Nope. So for me, it's not quite constant like that. I get more of like an electrical buildup and then a big discharge. Sometimes the discharge might not be as noticeable. It might not be as like large, but there's a buildup and a discharge. Okay, so where am I? Where am I in my social development? So in high school, I realized that if I was going to live the life that I wanted to live, I had to reconcile with this thing that was going on. So I can't say that there was one conscious decision, but I just somehow, I don't know how it's kind of amazing because there's so many like really bad pathways that I could have gone down, like major drug abuse, like, you know, I would say with all the social insecurities that I dealt with, that I probably could have easily been a candidate to, you know, take my own life or cause myself like intense physical like harm in some way. And somehow not only did I avoid that, but I just made a decision, like I was not gonna let the dystonia get me. I wasn't gonna let it like live my life. So I'll put this out there. The great philosopher. Now, this obviously, when I was in high school, it was like the late 80s and early 90s. So the great philosopher Captain Jack Sparrow had not come out yet, but I really like to quote Captain Jack Sparrow of the Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, y'all know him, right? He said, "The problem is not the problem. How you deal with the problem is the problem. Your attitude about the problem is the problem." Dystonia, it exists. It wasn't going away. It hasn't gone away. Right? There's no magic whatever pill, right? Someone said a magic pill earlier. So you all have a choice to either like, you can go forward through the world. You can move through the world and you can take as much as you can. Or you can let the dystonia live for you. And I can tell you that you walking through the world and living your life, it's going to be a lot funner. It's going to be a lot more positive. It's going to be a lot better than letting the dystonia define you and letting it determine how you live. All right. I have one more thing that I want to say, but I think I'm in my drop right there. What do you think about that? Yeah, you think no one shows? All right, we all gonna see a dog. I got Zoom signs. Welcome to the Dystonia Symposium. All right. Sorry. So everybody that has dystonia, raise your hand. How many of you folks that have dystonia were diagnosed by a non-primary doctor or a non-medical, non-family doctor? So when I was 25, I had a chiropractor, and my chiropractor had dystonia. And he said, dude, I went in because I obviously had like a tiny bit of neck pain, right? Just a little bit of neck pain. And he was like, you probably have dystonia. So I went to a neurologist, paid out of pocket. It actually wasn't a financial destroyer. Didn't destroy me financially to go to a neurologist and Dr. Cabasco is the one who diagnosed me. I was 25.
He's come a long way, you know, he gets his botulinum toxin therapy every 2 months, but it's really his attitude, let's get him going, and he's a very productive life, and he's helped a lot in his career. He didn't mention his career, but he's really, his career is helping other people with disabilities get ahead in life. Another wonderful person who's one of our greater supporters of Sony again, that she's to do her presentation on her life. You guys should turn this on.
If girls are going around passing out some stickers and raffle. If you guys want to write your name on them as they're going around, I'll collect them. I have a couple of things to raffle off to you guys. Yeah, Powerball tickets. Powerball tickets for everybody. I have a self-care basket, a book, and a barricade. Some self-care items. Okay, cool. Okay, so okay, it's kind of loud and it's also kind of long. It's kind of weird. It's okay. It's okay. The song had a quote from Bruce Lee, but I'll just tell you. Bruce Lee has a quote that famously says, "Empty your mind, be formless and shapeless." It's okay. Yeah, you can turn it off. It's fine. It says, "Empty your mind and be formless and shapeless like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup." I'm going to read from my notes if you don't mind. It simply means to be flexible in both mind and body. It's not about being rigid and stubborn about your beliefs, practices, understanding, and instead about being open-minded and able to change and adapt in whatever circumstances we are put into. And I believe there's no one better at adaptation than someone with dystonia. While dystonia may move us, we can be like water and adapt with dystonia to continue having the kind of life that we want, even with our present circumstances. I'd like to tell you a little story. I was on the phone with my friend and my shots were wearing off a couple weeks ago. My neck was pulled down into the middle of my spine. There's a vice grip in between my shoulder blades, pulling the rocks at the top of my shoulders that were super glued to my neck muscles. They were pulling down on my clenched jaw muscles, which are triggering an ice cream headache in the right side of my face and my eye. And I'm starting to get a migraine, and I'm trying not to be too focused on that because I'm also trying to have an important conversation with the person that I'm on the phone with about a project that's really important to me. And it's great because I love being on the phone with this particular friend because he doesn't mind if I suddenly stop talking. My face gets a little twisty and he just keeps talking to me. And he knows me well enough to know that if I stop talking and that happens and I get a little dancy, to just go on like everything's fine, which is a real relief. Because sometimes people don't get it. A lot of times people don't get it. It stops me from socializing, talking to people. I'm sure a lot of you understand probably why we got those kind of statistics that so many of us have social anxiety. So those kind of things tend to make it worse. A lot of you probably understand. So he notices that I'm very dancy. And we're laughing about it and helps me start to deal with the increased dystonia symptoms that I'm having. And he said, it seems like I'm actually dancing to a song. And I just kind of say like, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, I am. So I try to kind of respond, and he says, is it a made up song? And I said, yeah. And so he says, is this going on your album? Because my friends and I have an inside joke that I'm coming up with an album because I'm always making up silly songs. So I stop once I start to kind of calm down, and I stop and I write down the song to share it with you guys today, because I know that I'm going to be talking in front of you guys. So I kind of come up with some words to the song that's going on in my head, because it's kind of like, So I come up with some words so I can share it with you guys. And it goes like this. And it goes like, we're dancing because we're ducking dancing, because that's a little bit my attitude. We're ducking dancing, we're ducking dancing, we're ducking dancing. There's no music, but we're ducking dancing. And I noticed that this song is so different than the song that used to play in my head. I'm telling you this to illustrate one thing that I've observed about myself. Is that when I try to be joyful and do my best to avoid putting judgment on the fact that I'm in pain in any given moment, or that my pain or the dystonic spasms that sometimes pull me around like a puppet or tightly down into my spine so that my hands will stop functioning normally, or that my head won't turn, or a migraine that takes over my whole day, might be stopping me from doing something or progressing like I want in any given activity, or any number of disappointments that dystonia might be causing. I really try to quickly set on fire and let burn the thoughts that automatically come. I can't be around people. This is so embarrassing. My house is always a mess and there's nothing I can do about it. Dystonia is taking away my dreams. Why did this happen to me? I could do so much if I didn't have this. My daughter deserves a better mother than me. I can't do anything. Set it all on fire. These are lies and they don't serve me, and they actually make my dystonia worse. If I don't judge my dystonia symptoms, if I just let them happen, and I try to accept them, I'm able to not only cope better in each moment, but I'm also able to realistically pace myself for future moments and really have a fuller life. Maybe this isn't a challenge for everyone, but at certain points it really has been the whole challenge for me. When I can look at what my body is doing really realistically and matter of fact without those judgments, I can focus on what I can and cannot do about it. You know, that thing that people say, like, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I see everybody nodding. I think there's a reason why all of us know that, because it really is something we all should know. So while we're on the subject of what can I do about it, I want to talk about what I personally do to cope with my dystonia. So I know that maybe you, I don't know what I'm saying. Sorry, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. Okay, well, so I feel really lucky that a lot of things that I do to try to help my dystonia, since I've been diagnosed 6 years ago, a lot of the things that I have tried over time have been helping. With some setbacks and ups and downs, but that's why we're talking about adaptability, because we all have ups and downs. So she looks like she's having a good time. she's got a lot of good things going on. She's meditating. She's got her little weed plant. She's blocking out the haters and the drama. She's got some things figured out. She's got her meds. So that's me up there. I take meds every day that are prescribed to me. I take migraine medication. I take carbidopa, levodopa. I won't go down my list of medications because medications are different for everybody. Everybody reacts differently to medications. So everybody takes different medications, but I take rescue migraine medications and a daily medication. I get Xeomin injections, which I feel real blessed have been working pretty well for me since the beginning. I took a break from getting injections during quarantine to find out if I still have dystonia, and it turns out that I do. I try to pay real close attention to what I'm eating. I have found out that certain things aggravate my dystonia. I'm really excited to try some adaptogens. I think we're so lucky to have Joan. Thank you so much for that. I try to treat myself like a house plant, get plenty of water and sunlight. Self-care routine is not just about massages and baths, though it is also about massages and baths. It's also about protecting my peace. I try to behave like a little witch. I'm always trying potions, essential oils, all things comfy. I take good smelling things with me everywhere I go. I use topical THC and CBD both. I find them to be really very super helpful. Vagus nerve stimulation, like Patrick talked about, I find to be really helpful. There's many ways to stimulate the vagus nerve. Humming, like he talked about, also singing, gargling, and ice. It doesn't have to be a cold ice bath plunge. You can put an ice pack on your neck. Ice and heat I find especially helpful for migraine. Exercise. I love to dance. I do not like to go out to clubs, but I do like to be social and dance, and I dance with online clubs. I go on Twitch and I dance with my friends in an online club with an online DJ. It's so weird, but I've been doing that for like 5 years. It's super fun. I think weird things are very fun. I think we all just find our place, you know? And that's going to community too. I think it's awesome to find community where you can. I don't like to go out in public very often, but I'm super comfortable here with you guys. And I love coming to these things. And so I think it's awesome that we have these communities. And then that brings me to community service. I think it's very important to get outside of ourselves. It's super important for me to find a place to be of service, whatever that looks like. In the past, as soon as I got diagnosed, I wanted to start raising awareness for dystonia. That started to be less helpful for me in live streaming and talking about dystonia on a regular basis. I found that to be unhealthy for me. And so I looked for a different way to be of service. And now I have a different YouTube channel and a different Twitch where I'm making meditation videos and trying to be of service in a different way that isn't talking about my health all the time. So that's another way where we just have to be adaptable and be willing to change. If something's not working, then we adapt and be like water. So I find routine to be really helpful, but I also try to be open to changing my routine if it's not working. So yeah, those are basically the things that I do to try to help myself. Yeah, when I accept that I have dystonia and I put my energy into gently taking care of myself, I can also put my more energy into pacing, planning, and asking for support so that I can live my life to the fullest and be of the best service to my family, friends, and community. And I can choose to give having dystonia my own meaning if I want to, but there are times when I feel like there's no reason for it, and that's okay too. Therapy has been a huge part of coping with dystonia for me. And I don't think you have to necessarily recognize that you have some kind of trauma or mental illness or anything like that to seek therapy. I think if you have dystonia, or if you have someone in your family who has dystonia, you have a reason to go to therapy. I think if you're a human being with a beating heart, you have a reason to go to therapy. I'm a huge fan of therapy, and I think everyone should go to therapy. So if you need a reason to go to therapy, Naomi said, go to therapy, and there's your reason. That's what I think. So, yeah, my therapist will really like that I said that. So, yeah, that's basically what I think. And I just think that, yeah, that's basically what I think. So, I try to keep joy with me, and if I drop it, pick it up around the next bend and carry it with me until I need to do that again, and just surround myself with people who are willing to remind me when I forget. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you so much for letting me share with you. Just share also real quick. I just wanted to remember Susan real quick. Susan is the first person that I met online who has dystonia. She is the person who brought me to Dr. Hogan. When I first looked online for someone who had dystonia, I found Dystonia Friends, and Susan was so kind to me and invited me to Dr. Hogan's Symposium. And she's always been so extremely kind to me. So I just really want to celebrate her and recognize her. She was such a sweet person.
That was Susan Sutton, you mentioned again that we give memorial to that who recently died. And by that way, she carried it one step further, and she had a card in her wallet to donate her brain to Dystonia, and she died. It was unexpected. We expected her to live another 20 years, but her brain now is doing research for Dystonia. So that was great, and the messages we get from Naomi and from Jason, it's so powerful because those of us that work with Dystonia can give you a message, but the ones that come from the heart, people that are actually living with this, is so powerful. So thank you very much. And speaking of that, the person we all know that we've seen before that has is Tom Seaman, and he has sent a message by video, and I hope it comes through. Uh-oh. Not happening. So let's see here. Why is it not happening? Mark, why is it not? Go. Try again.
Hello, everyone.
Sorry.
Hello, everyone.
Back to the beginning.
Hi everyone, and greetings from North Carolina. I just wanted to pop in here real quick before the video begins, because I'm not actually going to be on the video. It's a live program with my voice over it, so I wanted to just say hello real quick. Thank you, Dr. Hogan, for having me be a part of this year's symposium. Last year I was there to speak, and it was a wonderful experience, and so I'm honored to again be asked to be a part of this. I hope you're all doing well and having a great day. And if you have any questions about this video, you can contact me anytime. Also, I plan to put this on YouTube, so I'll send out the link to Dr. Hogan. He can share it with everybody. Again, thank you for having me, and I hope you're having a wonderful day, and look forward to hopefully seeing you all again soon. Take care.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Seaman. My video today is called Coping Strategies for Living with Dystonia. pain, and chronic illness. Here is a quick video overview. I'm going to give a brief description of dystonia, a brief overview of my 20+ year journey living with dystonia and pain. I developed dystonia back in 2001, and it completely changed my life in ways I never could have ever imagined. I'm going to first talk about my ineffective coping skills early on, and then I'm going to talk about how I found and applied effective coping strategies that have changed my life for the better, and I'm hoping that some of these ideas will help you. So first off, what is dystonia? It's a neurological movement disorder that causes muscles to contract involuntarily. What this does is it can cause repetitive or intermittent twisting, turning, pulling, twitching, and curling of muscle movements. So imagine somebody had control of a certain part of your body and moving it in ways you didn't want them to. Now, it can also include a tremor, and for some people, they only have a dystonic tremor. Also, the condition can affect one or more than one part of the body. It's a highly variable condition in terms of where and how it manifests in an individual, so no two cases are exactly the same. If you want to learn more about what dystonia is and what it feels like, so I'm not going to talk about that in this video. You can go to my other video, which is a 4-minute video on YouTube that's called What is Dystonia and What Does It Feel? You can also go to my website, which is tomseaman.com, and click on the blog, and you can go in the search bar and type in the title, or actually on the right-hand side, it's the first article, rather blog that is on the list. You can just click on there and you can read through it to learn. Now, as I mentioned, I've had dystonia since 2001, and I'm going to show you how it physically in my life. As you can see here, I have cervical dystonia, and that means it affects my neck. So you can see my neck on the left-hand side, how it is turned towards my right shoulder. And my head was locked in this position with these severe muscle contractions in my neck and my shoulders and my back. And then whether I was resting or moving or doing anything, I was having additional pulling on top of it being kind of stuck in this position. So I could never get my head straight. And you can see on the picture on the right how all of this contraction was causing my entire upper torso to also curve. Now, if you want to learn about treatments and therapies and also the things that have helped me the most to improve from the severity of those symptoms, I have another video on YouTube that is called Dystonia Treatments and Therapies. So you can check that out. Now, the impact that dystonia had on my life was vast. I was going to graduate school. When I went to undergrad, I graduated, went into business for about 7 years and wanted to go back to school to get my master's degree in counseling. And I was not able to, after the first semester, I was not able to continue because the symptoms became so severe. So I had to drop out, I had to stop working. I literally was in so much pain and had severe contractions that I rolled around on my floor all day, just trying to find some level of comfort, which was near impossible back then. I lost all my money in savings, and I lost some of my friends and my family as well. People didn't really know how to be a part of my life anymore, and I wasn't able to do a whole lot, so it was very difficult to maintain certain relationships. So I ended up having to move in with my parents because I couldn't do anything at all without help. I developed severe anxiety and depression, and I gained 150 pounds from a sedentary, self-destructive lifestyle. So how did I first cope with all of this pain and anxiety and depression and everything from dystonia? I grieved, I cried, I yelled, which is not uncommon for a lot of us, and I think a pretty natural, normal response. I also then retreated from the world. I wanted nothing to do with anything or anyone. I was embarrassed to be around anyone because of my very obvious symptoms and the pain I was in, and of course the weight that I had gained as well. I drank alcohol to medicate the mental and physical pain, and I also had a horrible diet, and I gained 150 pounds. So here's some photographs that show the weight gain that I had. I was a former high-level athlete in many sports, and I went from 190 pounds to 340 pounds. Now, I've lost all that weight, but this is a physical representation of the suffering on the inside that I was experiencing. Now, over the years, I learned a variety of things to help improve my symptoms. And regarding the weight loss, you can see here, this is a picture of my nephew when he was, I think he was about 6 in the picture on the left, and he's 17 in the picture on the right. Now, I lost all the weight within 1 year, but I'm showing this picture so you can see, after applying a lot of techniques I'm going to share in this video, I was able to improve my posture and lose all that weight. You can see also a pictorial kind of history and story of my dystonia symptoms. And at the very bottom right, you can see how much they've improved. And even though it looks like there's nothing wrong, I still have muscle spasms, contractions, pain, balance issues, dizziness, fatigue. I don't have a tremor, but if I'm active for too long, I'll have some shaking a little bit just from the muscles fatiguing very quickly because the muscles are internally fighting against themselves all the time. I have scoliosis, disc herniations, all sorts of different things going on. So I still have quite a few things that I contend with, but the changes have been pretty dramatic and I've improved quite a bit. So I'm happy with where I am right now and hope to continue to keep getting. Again, I want to refer you to this video, which goes over treatments and therapies for dystonia. And in this video, I talk about the many things that have helped me. So if you want to check that out, please go to YouTube and just pop in the name of this video or go to my YouTube channel. You'll find the list amongst all my other videos. I've also written a book called Diagnosis Dystonia and Navigating. Real quick, those topics in the book, they include the various forms of dystonia and coping strategies for pretty much everything we deal with, from physical and emotional pain, anger, fear, depression, anxiety, stress, grief, relationships, shame that we might feel. I've been through all of it. It's still a daily challenge, but I give a lot of different strategies for how to deal with those different things. Healthy lifestyle strategies, pain management, and tips for dealing with the diagnosis and life changes, because for a lot of us, life changes very dramatically. So I give some ideas for how to do that. I also talk about effective doctor visits. Those are, of course, very important. Go into great depth about treatments, therapies, and medications, the work environment and disability process, because a lot of people need to stop working and get on disability, and that's a tricky thing to do. So I provide a lot of information about that as well. And also tips and tricks for doing daily activities with more ease, because when we are dealing with, say, involuntary movements and pain, it's difficult to do things that once were very easy. So I give different ideas for how to do those with more ease. And I share a lot of patient testimonials to give more than just my perspective on the various conditions, the dystonia itself and various conditions that develop in a lot of the emotional things we deal with. So for me, the key coping principles I had to learn first was to live for today, one day at a time, not the past or the future. I was stuck in the past and I was grieving my old self. And I knew eventually I had to somehow embrace who I was now and make the best of my life. I had to learn to treat problems as challenges to overcome and take pride in my achievements in overcoming challenges and even the smallest things that once came so easily. And I had to reject the why me, poor me questioning to get me out of living in a victim mentality. So for me, a lot of coping mechanisms I use are implementing daily living strategies. So being organized, setting realistic goals, and prioritizing activities. This helps keeps me focused on the present and goal-oriented. I also have to decide what's really important and what I can let slide. And I don't try and do too much and don't feel guilty for things that I don't complete. And I've learned to really slow down. I also allow flexibility and extra time in my plans, because sometimes we need to rest before something and rest afterwards, because some certain activities and events can really tax the body. And I really try and find things I enjoy and find the time to enjoy them. I actually schedule things every day. I think of things every day I want to do, and I try and schedule everything else around them so that I'm enjoying my life as much as I possibly can. And I do my most difficult tasks at the time of the day that I feel the best. And this, of course, differs. I also have to recognize that my capacities may vary. So what's possible one day may not be the same as another. And I have to do the very best. We all do the very best we can with whatever it is that we are dealt that particular day. So, as I said, everyone has good days and bad days, and we often don't know what that specific reason is. And a lot of us try and rack our brains to figure that out. But I suggest and encourage you to not overthink that too much. Just let it go and live the very best you can on that particular. I also do small creative projects around the house. I've taken up new hobbies to replace some of the things I can't do anymore, and also because I have new interests. And also helpful is connecting with others who are experiencing similar challenges. It's also important that we learn to listen to our body. So that means practicing self-awareness so we can read our body's messages, because it's always telling us what we need. So do you need to rest, exercise, sleep, maybe ice something, or use heat or massage, or just zone out and watch TV or go for a walk, whatever that might be for you. So listen to your body and what it's telling you. So if you've reached your maximum, perhaps take a break, hold back. If you feel you can push yourself, do. Another key coping strategy for me is keeping a symptom journal. And this helps us with getting a better idea for the physical symptoms we go through and certain patterns we have, along with emotions and feelings, and also understanding activities that we experience so that we can understand our body and its patterns. Now, this journal also helps better explain the condition that we have to our doctors so they can most appropriately treat us. Because we go through so many things, it's very difficult to remember everything during an appointment unless we have them written down. Another key component for coping is to be aware of guilt. So don't allow feelings of guilt to push you into doing something you know that your body will pay for during it or afterwards. And remember that you're the only one with unique knowledge about your condition and how life. So you need to learn to let go of the opinion of others. A lot of people have a lot of judgments and different thoughts about what it is and how it is we should live our lives. But we're the ones who really know best. So the best understanding that we will ever have is that we will never be fully understood. That's something somebody told me years ago, and I've held on to it for since then. It served me very, very. That being said, we have to make the best decisions for ourselves. So be careful about being a people pleaser. Many of us are, and it's important that we pull back from being this way because it really overextends us. And make wise decisions about your priorities. So on your best days, you may find you can do more things with relative ease, and other days you may do a single thing and it wipes you out for the rest of the day. So be very careful about how you choose the things that you do to make sure that you are getting your day to be as fulfilling as possible. And plan ahead so you can prepare yourself prior to an activity and rest time afterwards if necessary, kind of like on slate. And take personal time for yourself, whether it is to relax or to have fun. We have to not forget how important it is to enjoy our lives and not allow our health condition to define us. And focus on all you can do versus all the things you can't do or choose not to do because it's too difficult or challenging or painful. And learn how to ask for help without guilt. We all need help, but this is an area where a lot of us struggle. We don't want to ask and bother others, but in many ways it's a gift to ask others for help because people that care about us want to help and it makes them feel good. So it's a gift that we give to others and also to ourselves. Also important is to have positive, rational self-talk. So what that means is we have to acknowledge that life is hard and it's filled with pitfalls. Whether you have dystonia, pain, any other kind of health condition or not, everyone has challenges in their lives. So for me, I said to myself, I am going through one of the darkest storms of my life. I had to recognize and acknowledge that. And it's also about not resisting these bad things that happen to us. Instead, it's how do I work through this? One moment at a time, one day at a time. It's also about not fighting against challenges. So work with it. I like to say, what is this teaching me? This to me is being honest and being rational and dealing with what's in front of us versus running away from it or resisting. So be honest with yourself and your feelings. It's common for us to experience things like denial, anger, sadness, and loss as we come to terms with our situation. And the most important thing is that we have to accept that these feelings are part of the process and reject any negative thoughts you may have about having them, because you are entitled to feel all of it. It's very therapeutic and helpful to purge ourselves of the feelings and the emotions that we are experiencing. So for me, that means embrace the suffering. So that means to face it, to embrace it, to erase it. This little phrase I came up with as a reminder for myself that I need to not run from or resist or hide from challenging things. I have to face it, to embrace it, to hopefully erase it. Which means developing a healthy relationship with dystonia and pain. So as crazy as it may sound, learn to become friends with your pain. Don't look at it as an adversary. Look at it as something outside of you. It's a part of you. So we have to learn to accept about ourselves. Now, regarding relationships and relationships with others, get help from as many people and resources as you possibly can. Educate your family and friends, those that are willing to learn. Educate them about dystonia and the related conditions. And seek out the company of others, but choose wisely so you have good people in your life. And learn how to say no without guilt, because we have to know what our boundaries are. We need to set those boundaries. Now, I've talked a lot about the emotional side of coping, but there's also tools for pain and stress and dystonia that we can also utilize. And for me, that includes everything on this list. of the Theracane I mentioned first, or Shepherd's Crook or Back Buddy. It's just a long curved, kind of like a large candy cane that you can use on body parts you can't reach with your hands. So mainly your back, perhaps your shoulders as well. You can use this long hook that digs into and massages the tight muscles and painful muscles. And for me, I carry it with me wherever I go, and it's incredibly helpful. Massage machines, an acupressure mat, heat packs, ice packs, lotion. Nutrition is also important. And also taking time to rest and practice visualization, guided meditation, relaxation breathing, prayer, things that help to calm the mind. And learning how to do nothing without guilt. And I put that in quotes because nothing can oftentimes be everything. So it's a matter of decompressing and just getting away from the noise of the world, so to speak. Now, here are some additional coping tools I'll fly through real quick. Get outdoors and spend time surrounded by nature. It's very grounding for a lot of us. Avoid isolation. When we lose connection with others, that can intensify depression, helplessness, loneliness, fear, and even anger. For me, I avoided people for years. It was very hard for me to get back involved with the swing of things of the world because I was just so out of it for so long that it was even more difficult. So trying to avoid isolation, but again, choose the people you want to be around very wisely. So to that end, get involved with groups that give you a sense of belonging and engage in activities that give you a feeling of accomplishment. You can also connect with support groups in your area or online and share your experience with others and learn from their experiences. Everyone has something to offer, no matter how long you've had this condition, no matter what you're going through. And learn to create new ways of doing things that you enjoy that it may become difficult. And be creative and get passionate about it, because passion will fuel the motivation to do those things. And try to not feel guilty for what you can't do and praise yourself for the things that you do get. And be careful about comparing yourself to other people. If you're going to do any comparison at all, compare who you are today to your darkest days and how far you have come. And don't give up on your aspirations and goals. Just make them more realistic within the framework of your current situation. And accept, trust, and love yourself no matter what you view is wrong with you. And I say what you view because everyone's perception of what's wrong with us is. Prayer and meditation are very helpful. Simplifying our goals, pampering ourselves. We need to be kind and gentle with ourselves. Eating well, of course, is important, and incorporate stress reduction activities into your daily routine. Now, a lot of these coping strategies are also a form of self-care. And if you want to learn more about I have another video on YouTube that's called The Importance of Self-Care that goes over a lot of different ideas and the various things I do for self-care. So you can check that out on YouTube as well. Now, it's very important that we understand that it's not what happens to us in life that defines us and how we feel. It's what we do with it that defines us, determines our character, and helps us find meaning and purpose in our life. So focus on today. Don't waste your time worrying about what could have been. The past is over. We need to focus on the present moment to find that meaning and purpose now. So how did I find meaning and purpose living with this life-changing disorder? I had to flip the script. I said to myself, I don't know why this happened or why I'm going through this, but I refuse to go through this for nothing. But I worked my butt off and learned some ways to manage my symptoms. Ended up becoming a personal life coach to help other people who are going through dystonia and other difficult health and other life challenges. I've become an author, a speaker, and I'm a very active patient advocate. I've written articles, over 100 articles all over the world in different magazines, online, and in print. These are just a handful of them here. I'm not putting this up here to say, hey, look at me, I did all this and everything. I'm trying to share this with you to inspire you a little bit, hopefully, and give you hope that you can do something that you're passionate about, no matter how dark your days may seem right now. I've also written 2 books. The first one is called Diagnosis Dystonia, Navigating the Journey, and my newest book is called Beyond Pain and Suffering, Adapting to Adversity and Life Challenges. I go over in those books some of what we discussed in this video today, plus numerous other topics in far more detail. So if you have them, I hope you find them to be helpful. And if you decide to get them, I hope you enjoy them and they are of help to you on your particular journey and whatever struggles or challenges in life you're going through. You can get them on my website, which is tomseaman.com, as well as on Amazon. And I want to share these pictures again in light of what I just shared with you about some of the things that I have done. I want you to remember that this came from a guy who was living with severe symptoms of dystonia, where I was practically living on my floor all day long for years and had severe muscle contractions and pain through the roof, to the point of having to medicate with food and alcohol and becoming morbidly obese. So I was in a very, very dark time in my life. And when I finally kind of got my brain working in a different way and put my mindset in a different direction, I was able to get passionate about the things that drive me and interest me. And I was able to come out of a lot of this and be able to do some really exciting, fun things. And I say that because I don't want you to ever give up on your dreams and your aspirations and your goals. And just because you're going through a really dark time right now doesn't mean that you still can't do some really fun and meaningful and exciting things. So with that being said, please don't ever give up and keep going. Thank you so much for listening and watching this. I hope you found it to be helpful. If you have any questions or comments about it, you're more than welcome to contact me anytime at all through my website, which is tomseaman.com, or you can catch me on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. You can email me. Anything at all. If you have questions or comments or just things you want to share, I'm available and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And we have to remember that we are here to support each other. So I am more than happy to do whatever I can to help you with whatever kind of tough challenges you may be going through. So please feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you again, and please take good care of yourselves.
Well, that kind of brings it all together. So yeah, so that's great. So we're here with 3 great people that have this story that help you. Now, you know, we're running appropriately. We've got some great discussions. Tom's session was a little longer than I expected, but That was great, though, really good. If you have, we have questions, we can take some questions. Dr. Rose here and Joan and Mickey. If you have any dietary questions, we can bring those up first because Joan has to leave in a few minutes. Well, yeah, Mickey has to leave first too. We all have to leave. In a few minutes, and Rob Sutherland is going to be here to demonstrate some of the benefits, why dance is important, for so many things we can discuss when he gets here. If you're able to stay for a few minutes, do some movement and show your some of your flexibility. Maybe we can come up set up here. Yeah, maybe we can. I think in case any questions. Oh yeah, question. Oh, you have the questions written down. Good. Okay, good. We may have to shorten the question answer a little bit, and then then again, if people have questions for things we don't get to, we definitely will keep the questions. If you have any questions, let me know, so I can put the answers out on the email blast, and we can get the answers out to everybody. So some people could stay and so forth. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Hi. I want to give you some prizes. Okay. Got Alan Moore. Hi. Would you like a self-care basket or a Theracane or Tom Stevens book? The book? Right. That's great. You're welcome. Great. Oh my gosh, Deanna Moore. 2 in 1 family. Are you sure? Okay, you're sure. That's very nice. Okay, we'll mix them up a little bit. Okay, Mary Jo. Hi, would you like the Theracane or the basket? The basket, okay, I'll bring it to you. We'll draw the name real quick. I know we gotta be moving here. Gregor. Okay. The Theracane for Gregor. Oh.
One more. Mary Jo was so kind to do her creative artistry and doing the floral arrangements in the back and the front. So should we auction those out too? So also, yeah, we can go ahead and do an auction for people here, or they can take home a floral arrangement.
Okay. Strasbo, that's you. Okay, that's for the flowers. Oh, nice. Bonnie Potter. Okay, flowers for you too.
That's great. Good way to end it.
Hello, everybody. The question I have in the card here is Dr. Price's program suitable for OMD, which I heard, make sure that's oromandibular dystonia. I get a sense it's more geared to cervical dystonia. There's actually a lot of stuff on Dr. Price's program. It's not just cervical dystonia. It's also, you want to close to, just sounds really echoey. Is that all right? Sorry. So the program actually is geared to all kinds of dystonia, and yes, there is obviously cervical is a big portion of the dystonia thing, but I think you'll find he has all kinds of things on there. I believe you can sign. I'm not sure if you can get it for a month free, or you can sign up for 1 month at a time. You're not committed, so if you want to check it out, it's worth checking out, regardless of your dystonic issues. It's got lots of really good information on there, and Dr. Perez really works with people with the full gamut of dystonia. He obviously came from a background of music dystonia. He's a musician, and he has dystonia himself with hand. But I know he's worked, I've had clients work with him who have run as dystonia and all kinds of different things. So definitely worth checking out. And as I say, I think in terms of value for money, it's hard to beat. Does anybody else have any questions for me? I will, I said, I'll get my hand out, so to Dr. Hogan, and he'll blast out to you, so that has any of the references in that the things I was talking about. Anyway, thanks for being here, then. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, my one question was, can one take all of the adaptogens and can you take them with Symposium? So first of all, it's not encouraged that you take them all together. And like I mentioned, if you want to take a combination of 3 of them, is fine. And maybe try those out for two months, some say even 3 months, to see how they work for you. And if it doesn't seem like it's working well for you, you could go ahead and try a different combination. Then as far as taking them with an antidepressant, it's just some thought that sometimes they could work on the same pathways as your antidepressant. So it might improve the effectiveness of your antidepressant, but honestly, I just say let your provider know that you're trying this and just kind of work with them, because maybe you could lower your dose or something if it's not as working as well. But I kind of like to think about like Botox, and well, I especially talk to my migraine patients about this, but you know, a lot of times we don't get our symptoms under control at just one treatment modality. And my feeling is that adaptogens, their ideas maybe not always to replace a therapy, but maybe add effectiveness to something you're already doing. So I understand that's kind of a general response, but I'd say, yes, it's okay, but also just let your provider know that this is what you're doing, and maybe you can come in a little more often just to touch bases or something like that. So, okay. Anybody else? Nutrition, adaptogens? Okay, great. Oh, yep. I wonder about that. Oh, the velvet bean, the mucuna appearance. Yeah. You know, some people will take it, and if you have ideas about this, let me know. But the dose that you get is, even I think if you take 500 milligrams, is of the mucuna, it's like 15 milligrams. It's pretty small, and it shouldn't impact it much. It's pretty mild because again, it's kind of working on all different symptoms, but that is part of it. So my answer is probably no, but I always say just let whoever's prescribing it for you know that, hey, I'm doing this. And yeah, that's my disclaimer. But I do know people with Parkinson's that sometimes will take this a little bit too. It's more known for its effectiveness as an antidepressant more than anything. Okay.
Yeah, I think the mucuna has more risk of overdosing in a Parkinson person because their therapeutic window is very narrow, which means they take just a little too much and they're overdosed, and they take too little and they don't feel it. I've seen people go crazy with the mucuna and come back overdose. So it's possible, but as she said, it's a much milder dose generally, but there's no direct conversion that anyone can do. So 2 really good questions. One, the question of which condition has more area of the brain affected, dystonia or Parkinson. I think the point was that Nikki said that in dystonia, it's not limited to just one area. And so there's no easy fix, there's a lot of interest in stem cells and things like that, and can't just go in and fix one area. And I think what's hard about a lot of dystonias is that we don't, well, first of all, there's so many different kinds, but almost all of the isolated ones don't have anything consistent on autopsy. You look, you don't see any abnormal proteins. You may on some of them, but like I said, there's so many types, but in many of them we don't see. So we have to conclude that it's on a molecular level. And so we don't actually know for most dystonias where they localize. I mean, presumably based on electrophysiologic studies and function, we can say somewhere in the basal ganglia, and the basal ganglia connect to this and that, but often we don't. In Parkinson's, it's a little easier because you do see abnormal protein deposits within the brain cells of Parkinson neurons. And we do know that it affects almost all areas of the brain, though it does start in some areas and spreads, and that we also know it affects other parts of the central and peripheral nervous system. In fact, there's a test now that we can do skin biopsy and find Lewy bodies and diagnose Parkinson's very early within a 95% certainty. So we know it's not just one area of the brain. I think there was confusion because she made a comment about deep brain stimulation acting slower, and I think it depends greatly on the type of dystonia and the type of target that's used in Parkinson's and what the particular symptoms are. But I think, specifically for dystonia, there's so many different types, and many of them we don't know where it localizes. The next question is, how do you do testing to see if dystonia is DNA related? That's an excellent question. DNA technology has gone just through the roof, exponentially fast. Now you can test for, I think was it 30 or 40 most common causes of dystonia with a $250 test with pretty good accuracy. Where these tests are limited are even when you count the the majority of common dystonias that are in this panel, it doesn't cover all of them. In fact, it doesn't even cover half of them. And it doesn't even cover all the types of mutation within a certain disease. And a good example is dopa responsive dystonia, which depending on what type of mutation and where in the gene it is, you may or may not be able to detect it with this method or that method. So oftentimes a geneticist, if you have 4 affected family members, one of them tested positive and, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, you won't even test them. But if your family doesn't know what type of dystonia, there are linkage studies that can be done. So, blood can be gathered from a bunch of relatives who have symptoms, who don't have symptoms, and they can see what overlaps and find new genes. Oftentimes now there's a new way of looking at genes that kind of looks like the whole genome, but it still costs $1 million. Still, because of the testing for different types of mutations, some of them are in coding or non-coding regions, some of them are repeaters or not repeaters. I'm not a geneticist, but there's still a lot of work to do to detect all mutations. Some genes are found in some tissues and not other tissues. So it's very, very complicated to rule out a genetic condition in someone who doesn't have a family member with the same thing. And even 2 family members with the same thing, same gene, can look totally different. That's the other. I had a child with very bad ankle dystonia. She kept kicking herself and couldn't walk. The mom developed head tremor and writer's cramp 40 years later. Was diagnosed after the kid. And they had the same mutation. So there's a lot of difficulty confirming a genetic cause, but if you have a lot of family members with it, it's pretty suspicious. I would say if there's a question of genetics, it may have relevance to the therapy, how responsive brain surgery might be, especially if it's involving the whole body. Is it a progressive or static? Then genetic testing can be pretty helpful. And even 5 years ago, you couldn't get it under $500 because insurance rarely pays for it. It's $250 now. in 2 more years, maybe we could test them, quadruple the genes for half the price. So I hope that that will be the case. And it's not the same as 23andMe people. It's not the same. Just I'll just throw that out. All right, so I don't know if that might be questions. Oh, wait. That's adapted. Do dystonia patients report brain fog? And yes, a brain fog is a very difficult concept because it can mean a lot of different things to different people. But oftentimes brain fog is a combination of fatigue and poor concentration. And that doesn't exactly localize to a single area of the brain, but I think in general, when there's a slowing of cognitive function, it often points to the white matter or the deep connections of the outside or thinking parts of the brain to the deeper or relay parts of the brain. And so the white matter can be slowed by any number of things. It is involved in many dystonias. It can be slowed by medication. It can be slowed by anxiety and depression, lack of sleep, untreated sleep apnea, any number of drugs, alcohol. So when people have brain fog chronically, the first thing we ask about is these things that we have pretty standard treatments for. How are you sleeping and how much do you drink and what medications are you taking? But brain fog may just be inherently part of the condition due to some effect on the subcortical circuits that connect basal ganglia to the thinking. Sorry, so
Oh, good. Yeah, so do we all do this sort of hand on fog, brain fog?
Oh, okay.
Oh, that somebody said, ask people about, show of hands, how many people think they have a brain fog? Yeah, so yeah. Yeah. There's another show of hands that asks, how many people have other sensory symptoms other than pain? Such as abnormalities in taste or smell or anything like that. And yeah, the only other thing, there's a couple. The one was about what is the hope for dystonia. There was one person I know, Lisa, that has a condition with dystonia, and there's a site called Hope for Dystonia by someone called Federico, and also in Toronto, like Dr. Farias. And he has a nice site also that he kind of deals with a lot with developing neuroplasticity and exercise for dystonia. So it's another one more resource called Hope for Dystonia. The last question is on tardive dyskinesia. Tardive dyskinesia is a disorder that comes as a result of hypersensitivity of the dopamine receptors in the brain, usually related to some type of medication people would take, often for certain type of mental illness situations or even depression, and that can produce hyperreactivity in the brain that can produce abnormal movements. Sometimes it's mistaken for dystonia. That's important, is that there are people that have tardive dyskinesia that come in, they're having involuntary movements. People say, well, it's dystonia. Well, it's probably dystonia, but maybe also related to the result of medications they've taken. And the difference is that condition can be controlled or is improved considerably with medications such as Ingrezza or Austedo. And so it's something that we also could use, botulinum toxins for in addition. So if there's other questions, for sure, people definitely should step up. Let me know. I can pass them on to the whole group. We have a nice email blast now that I can send out to people. Make sure I have everybody's emails so we can send it out to the group. So now we have the pleasure of bringing this all together a little bit. There's one, we talk about exercise a lot, but one of the as Dave said, said that I've really been into dance. My wife and I do dance frequently every week because there's this dance. Besides the exercise aspect, is the emotional, the fun, the laughter, the connection with the partner, the lateral movement that Mickey's talking about a lot. It all can come together and dance. You know, like Naomi said, she just dances, you know, to music, whatever, to online groups. So whatever it takes, you know. But we have Rob Suppleman, who's been the instructor for Joan and I for 16 years, and he's also for a number of years has done the Dance for Dystonia program that we had before pre-COVID. but now anybody's interested in dance. But so he's gonna come up and do a program. We can move things back a little bit, and we just kind of end with just some movements. Just enjoy yourself, have fun, stay as long as you like, and we're gonna kind of be wrapping things up in a few minutes. But thank you everybody for coming today. We're gonna try to do this every year, but give me suggestions of how we should make it different. We will have, I'm sure we'll have some ways of making the Zoom a little better for next year. And just stay well and never give up. I'll say something about that. Thank you. You're so great. Thank you so much for doing this. You're so wonderful. You're so good. You did a wonderful job, actually. Oh. Good. You did a great job. Oh, it's terrible. She was. She actually came to see me for appointment. She has a daughter in Portland. She has a sister in Portland area. Well, she did, but then she moved to Puget or no, Florence. Yeah. Anyway, so she was there and she was in Portland, and it's just horrible. She was sitting in a restaurant with her sister having coffee on the way down, and somebody drove through the restaurant, through the window, and just hit her. Yeah, isn't it amazing? With the wrong place at the wrong time. It just happened to be at that spot that she was sitting in the restaurant where someone drove the car into the restaurant, and then she get right there. No, just somebody they don't even know if it's somebody that lost their brakes or wasn't paying attention or whatever, but it just.
I probably saw that on someone in Salem.
It was in Portland.
I probably saw it in the news and didn't see the name.
Yeah. Oh, isn't that fun?
Okay, because yeah, I met her.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's like a wonderful person. here.
Okay, we're just ready to learn a little bit of waltz. All right, come on up. We'll do some of this stuff. Perfect.
Any question? Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
This time.
Enjoy the day.
Get some reading. We got everything plugged in.
Demonstrate.
What's that? Okay, how's everybody doing? Have a good day? Yeah, yeah. Was Pat nice to you? He was, always. Okay, let's have everyone start here. They both learn the Jones and the ladies part because they're one and the same. So sometimes I'm confused about this. Maybe you don't even know what. Sometimes I forget my left from my right. Anyone else have that problem? All the time. Yeah, when someone asks you if you're left-handed or right-handed, and you're not sure what to say, what does that mean? Yeah, there's something really confused in what I am. Yeah, right, okay. So for the John, actions for everything, we're going to start forward with that left foot, and step forward on the left. Small step side on the right. Bring the feet together. We're halfway home. Back on the right. Side on the left. And bring the feet together. And that's it for today. Yeah, was that good? Now we learned it all in 5 minutes. He's not paying any attention to us. Once again, a few more times, and start with that left foot. Forward left. Side together. Back on that right. Right. Side together. Forward left. 2, 3, and right.
Can't see your
2,
feet.
3. So as you bring the feet together here, as you bring your feet together, just make them touch, change weight, and move the opposite foot. Change weight, move the opposite foot. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. How easy is this? Now can you pat your head and rub your stomach? And stand on one foot. Now 3 and 1, 2, 3. Excellent. So the gentleman, usually the gentleman starts forward on that, usually in America. So gentlemen, we're going to start forward with that left foot. A left. 2, 3, a 1. 3 and a 1. 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. Excellent. And ladies usually start on the right. More times than not to the back. And ladies will start back on that right. Right. 2, 3, a left. And right. 2, 3, and left. So you can see we're doing exactly the same part, but hopefully at the opposite time. Yeah, otherwise we run into each other. 2, 3. Excellent. Good. So we'll practice starting with the right and the left here. Ready to try with some music? Yeah. Does anyone have a waltz that they can sing? What do you mean? Don't give me that look. Yeah, some people have great voices. First you play music, what do you think? Sometimes I threaten to sing and they totally cut it off. So count 3. A 1, 2, 3, left. Right. Left. 1, 2, 1. A 1, 2,
3, and 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. Excellent. Carol, looks like you've done this before. All right, good. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay, good. Let's go ahead and stop. Now let's start back on the right. Let's see if we can do that. Count 3, and then start back on the right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 11. Right. 1. Excellent. Very good, all right. And you thought this was going to be difficult. Huh? Yeah. And again, just, having some movement, that's a great thing about waltz. We get to go forwards, we get to go backwards, we get to go side to side. So that's really what we're striving for in all of our dances. A lot of times foxtrot is a good example, where the gentleman goes forwards a lot and the ladies go backwards a lot. So they don't, ladies get tired of going backwards sometimes in foxtrot. Here it's more of a 50-50 proposition. So if we have leads, have the leads over on this side. Come on, leads over here. Come on over here. Step over here. Right on this line here. See if you can tell the line. Just watch the chord there, dude. I'll be the one to trip on the chord. Don't worry about that. And go ahead. It's okay. Yeah, you can join us. No? Okay, so gentlemen's going to go forward on the left. Ladies going to go back on the right. We'll do the mirror of each other. Count 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Excellent. And look deep into your partner's eyes. No smiling. This is serious business. No giggling. No, that's okay. We want to have fun. That's the key. Okay, let's try with some music. Good questions? How do you know it's a waltz? 3 counts. Fast, slow, or medium? It doesn't really matter, yeah. I mean, we have fast waltz, we call it Viennese waltz, and we have slow waltz, which is half as slow. So, here comes that television. Okay, I'll count 3 to get us started. 1, 2, 3. Step, 2, 3, step. And 1, 2, 3, 1. Excellent. Make sure and breathe, that helps. Very good, all right. Pat is going to be impressed when he looks up here and sees everybody on time. Like they've been doing it forever. Excellent, good. Yes, okay, so one of the hardest parts I think about dancing with music is getting going at the appropriate time. When do we start? It's like, when do I go? So usually we have a 1 and a 2 and a 3, right? So how we count this here? This is a pretty simple one. 1, 1, 1,
start? Now, it might be a trick question. Sometimes the obvious answer isn't the correct one. So if I want to be stepping on 1, when do I need to start? It's already gone. Yeah, so I heard someone say 3. Yeah, towards the end of 3, I need to get started. So if I hear 1, 2, 3, 1, I'm going to be late. How often? Every time. Yeah, I'll be a pro at that. Yeah, yeah. So it's hard. We have to attune our ear to the music a little bit. And this takes just a little bit of practice. But if you learn this from the beginning, you go, wow, that will make sense. And we have to do that in all of our music. So we hear 1, 2, 3, 1. So kind of on the REE of 3, we start to get started, we get rolling. So then we're stepping right on the 1. Yeah. So on that E or E3, we start to move. It doesn't have to be fast. We're 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's get a little practice here with the music. Does that make sense what I'm saying? And usually, who leads Pat? I forget. Usually the gentlemen are the leaders. So we have the biggest job to begin with, yeah. But we have to hear the music, we have to get ourselves and our partners going all the time. Here we come, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Excellent, you guys. And gals. All right, good, good, good. Let's make sure that wasn't a fluke and we'll do it once more. Yeah. That was very good. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1. All right, very good. So when you think of waltz, you may never think of waltz, but if you were to think of waltz, what words might come to one's mind? Box, maybe, yeah, that's good. Dancing. Beauty and the Beast, yeah. I think every Disney movie has a waltz in it, some sort of waltz. Yeah, what's that? Yeah, yeah. A lot of times our waltzes have rotation in them. So we're making them turn just a little bit. We don't have to turn them off, but just a little bit. So if we kind of divide the room up into 8s, if we could do something about that, or even less, even 16ths, just a little bit of turn here. And my turn is going to happen between my number 1 step and my number 2 step when I bring my feet together. So no turn on 1, just a skosh, a little bit of turn on 2, bring my feet together. So if the gentleman's leading, if we add that turn in, we have to give our partner a chance to catch up. So if I'm doing that, she better be able to go. But it takes a little bit of practice. Yeah. So but we have to give them a chance. So just a little bit of turn, okay? So let's have everybody face this way again. Just going to turn around, Joan. And so again, just add a little bit of turn. We're stepping forward on 1. Now instead of stepping directly to the side, we're going to move a little bit on the diagonal and bring my feet together. So now I've rotated just a little bit to my left. Same thing going backwards. 1, 2, 3. Just a little bit of turn, David. Don't you overcook it. And 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2. So straight forwards. Now, as you get turned around, halfway around, it's like the wheels come off. It's like, where'd you go? Yeah. So that's where just a little bit of turn really helps, because we have the temptation to turn a lot. A little there will do. Yes. That is a very good question. Yes. What about that for an answer? Usually, whichever foot I'm going forwards with in the box, that's the direction I'm going to turn. So that's an excellent question, because we want to be able to turn to the right and to the left. And so here on this particular box, I'm going forward with my left foot. So my rotation is going to go this direction towards my left hand. If we were in England, we were driving on the other side of the road. Who's ever driven in England? Scary, huh? Yeah. I just assume take a taxi. It's more fun. So if I'm going forward with my right foot, or right, 2, 3, and left, 2, 3. So I'm not going to work on the right turn today, but usually that foot that we're going forward with. If I try turning to the right with my left foot, I'm going against the grain. It makes it, yeah, it's hard enough. We don't need to make it more difficult. So again, forward on that left foot, the left, 2, 3, or right, 2, 3, the left, 2, 3, and right, 2, 3. Now, how's the lady ever going to know that the gentleman wants you to turn? He just starts rotating. Yeah, he just starts turning. Maybe David and Marty would demonstrate that for us. Yeah, there's a couple right here. So do a couple boxes without turn. Yeah, a couple boxes without turn. And I know. So try to do a couple boxes without turn, and then some with turn, and see if Marty can follow you. See if she'll behave. She always does that. And 1, 2, 3. She's not sure. She's just patiently waiting for him. Patiently. And he just slowly adds that turn in. And he's not doing anything differently with his arms. He's just rotating his body. Excellent. Yeah, does that look easy? And that's because a lot of times Joan will think we have to steer with our arms, and we're not. Our arms are connected to our body. If my body moves, my arms will move along with. So let's go ahead and step across, and if you have a partner, grab one. And you can just have a two-hand hold. Let's make it a little simple. Just grab one of the ladies' and Joan's hips. There you go. Just right there, perfect. One, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's go ahead and everybody stop. Okay, I'll count 3 to get us started. Okay, so practice getting going on the E of 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. Okay, who found it a little more difficult with a partner in front of them? Yeah, it is. I think the temptation when we have a partner is this is how we kind of like to dance. Hold on just a second. The temptation is how we like to dance with a partner in front of us. Yeah, and if your heads fit together, it's perfect. But this is kind of like how it chicken looks. Yeah, what? It looks awkward? Really? Yeah, I can just see my ballet teacher now. The foot right where it belongs, right there. Yeah, so again, the idea, the more temptation is to look at your feet. Everybody was doing the walks with the music perfectly. If the turn throws you, go back without turn, just try without turn. Make sure bring those feet together on 3. And the more that I pick my head up, look what happens here. It brings my center towards my partner. She's doing the same thing, and that's what we're leaving, not our arms. Okay? Temptation is look down, resist temptation. Maybe you've heard that somewhere before. Carol? Okay, it's ground partner again. So just try without turn first. Just without turn. A 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. There you go. All right, easier writing them down, isn't it? Yeah. All right, okay. So again, the temptation on the turn here is to do a lot. And that's what we strive for. But, you know, let's walk before we run. You know, so if you just think of just a hint, kind of like cayenne pepper. Yeah, you don't put a tablespoon in, right? Yeah, maybe 16. Just a little dabble duty here, just enough to provide a little bit of input. And no turn is fabulous. We want to do no turn by all means. And then we want to add some turn anytime. So we want to have a mix of that. Okay, so we decided waltz was Disney-like, dance-like. Any other descriptive terms? Strauss family, yeah, there's Viennese waltz right there. That's fast. Those are fast waltzes. Adding rotation, right? Adding some turn right into the left. What about? Thank you. All right. How about a turn for the ladies?
Yep, I made her do that.
You did? How'd you do this? Oh, you want to demonstrate? No. Let's have the gentleman over here. Let me show you how to get the ladies to turn. Gentleman over on this side. Come on over here, guys. Yeah. or the leads. Don't come on over here, yeah. So for the guys, raise that left arm. Lower it. Raise it. Lower it. Well, my arm's getting tired. So can we just do that whenever we want to? I mean, we can do it whenever we want to, but we may not get the desired result that we would like. So where we're going to turn our ladies is we're going to do half our box first. A 1, 2, 3. As I'm going back with my right foot, I'm going to raise my left arm. 1. Keep the box going. 1. And lower it at the same spot. And she will have made it 5, sometimes 6 turns. Yeah. No, just one turn, just one turn. Yeah. Okay. Once again, for the gentleman or for the ladies, half the box. 1. Arm goes up. I keep that arm up. And I lower the arm as I see the whites of her eyes. Yeah, she comes around. So I'm not helping her turn. I'm just raising the arm. I'm suggesting that she does her turn. Doesn't always work, but usually, yeah. Okay, so ladies, questions? Questions, please? What's that? Which way do they turn? Oh, I'm going to show them their part. Yeah, so they're going to go under your left arm. So if they go under your left arm, she must be going under. Aha. Okay, ladies, we're going to get half our box here. 1, 2, 3. As you're going forward with your left foot, your right arm goes up. So you're still stepping right in. Now you're going to get 6 steps around the hula hoop size circle. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, back in, 1, 2, 3. What's that? Come on up here. Right there, that's a good spot for them. Yeah, it's okay, I don't bite. So we get half our box. 1, 2, 3. Arm goes up on 1. You're gonna step out. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Keep coming forwards. And then 1, 2, 3 for being lost. We found you pretty quickly. That's okay. But so here, I'll demonstrate for a moment. 1. Arm goes up on 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Kind of just nice, easy steps as you're going around. Again, our hula hoop size circle, each step going forwards. Ready to try it again, ladies? Ready? And 1. Arm goes up. Step out. Keep coming around. Keep coming around. 1, 2, 3. And how do we know what rhythm to use? We haven't changed. That metronome is just ticking along. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay, once more. Follow along, leads. Ready. And 1. Arm goes up. Go out. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. And maybe David and Marty would demonstrate that for us. Yeah. Ready? Yep, ready. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, just like that. Now, leads, try that once more, David. Notice what he's doing with the hand there, or maybe better put what he's not doing with the hand. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1. Notice how that hand just stays right above the lady's head. Yep. I'm not stirring the pot at all. Okay, let's grab a partner. Give it a try. So as we're going around, just fingertips as the ladies are going around. Ready? And 1, 2, arm up. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, Look at this, Pat. Everybody, all together, first try right out of the gate. Look at that, at 11. No, that's good, yeah. Okay, once more without music. So again, gentlemen, I'm just raising that arm as I'm stepping back on 1, so my lady knows to start her turn on 2. We're giving her one step ahead of time so she can figure out what the heck we're trying to get her to do. Now, ready, and 1, 2, arm up, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. You have to trust your feet. You think they're not right, and they are. You do all these shuffling. Yeah. Yes, you was. Okay. I'll count 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 3, 1. I can try a little easier one here. Okay, let's get all started with the music. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. All right, you guys, was that fun? Yeah. All right, great, good job, thank you so much. And again, we have different tempos and different styles of waltz. Some are easier to hear than others, but again, we're always trying to find that one, you know? Sometimes the one is 2, 3, 2, 3. It's the silence, not the boom, 2, 3. All right, good job. Questions? All right, thank you, Dr. Hogan. All right, great. Thank you, guys.
Very good partner.